I moved into a one-bedroom apartment 6 months ago after getting hired at a small clinic on the west side. Nothing fancy, just a 3-story brick building from the 70s with gray carpeted hallways and a faint smell of old paint. My unit was on the 4th floor, which technically meant the top, since the building was built into a hill. The slant meant the back entrance led straight into the 3rd floor. It wasn't perfect, but the rent was low and it was quiet. The clinic was just 20 minutes away, and for the first few months, I barely noticed my neighbors. Just nods in the hallway, the usual muffled TV noise through walls, that kind of thing. Then Mark moved in next door. I met him in the stairwell one evening as I was coming home from work. He appeared suddenly behind me on the steps as I unlocked the door leading to the 4th floor. Just said, "Hey neighbor," real casual, but it made me flinch. I hadn't heard him coming up the stairs. He smiled like he thought it was funny. Said his name was Mark and he'd just moved into 408. Mentioned he worked from home and would be around most of the time. I smiled politely, said something like, "Cool," and opened the door to my floor. That night I heard heavy furniture scraping across the floor through the wall. Not just once or twice either. It kept going for over an hour. At first I figured maybe he was moving things around, trying to settle in. But it went on so long I had to turn up the volume on my laptop just to hear a show. I didn't want to be that neighbor, so I let it slide. Over the next few days, I noticed him more often. It didn't matter what time I left or came home. Mark always seemed to be stepping out or returning at the exact same moment. I'd open the stairwell door and he'd be coming in from the parking lot, or walking past the trash room, or locking his unit just as I reached mine. It was too frequent to be random. Still, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe our schedules just overlapped. One night I came back late from work, arms full of groceries, and Mark was in the hallway unlocking his door. He offered to help carry my bags. I said no thanks. A couple nights later, he offered again. Same bags, different day. Again, I said I was fine. That time, he gave me this look, just a second too long, before walking away. A few days later, I saw him again near the mailboxes. He asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. I said I was busy. He followed it up with a suggestion to catch a movie. I shook my head. He laughed like I was being shy, like it was a game. I made sure to keep my tone firm the next time I turned him down. That's when things started to feel deliberate. I'd leave in the morning and Mark would open his door right after me. I'd come home at 7:10. Mark would be already in the hallway or coming up the stairs. It was always him. Once or twice I caught him looking out the peephole just before he opened his door. My building had 2 stairwells, one at each end. I started using the back one more often, even if it meant going around. Then I changed up the times I did laundry in the shared basement. But even then, I ran into him twice by the vending machines. He said he just needed something sweet. I stopped going to the fitness room on the ground floor. I'd used it every other day, but suddenly Mark started showing up there too. Once he came in while I was already on the treadmill. No one else was around, and he didn't even work out. Just leaned on the wall and made small talk about the weather. I left early. The next week, I adjusted my schedule even more. Started waking up earlier to leave before he could catch me. I skipped the main stairwell entirely. Took the trash out at night instead of morning. But even with that, he found ways to run into me. He asked me what time I usually got home. Said he'd noticed it was pretty much always the same. That was the last time I answered anything. After that, I stopped responding at all. No eye contact, no greetings. Just walked past. Didn't stop him though. A couple days later, he knocked on my door around 9 p.m. Said he'd made too much pasta and had a plate if I wanted some. I didn't open the door. Just said, "I'm good, thanks." He stood there for a few seconds before saying, "All right," Suit yourself. That night, I locked the deadbolt and pushed a chair under the doorknob. I didn't sleep much. The coincidental meetings didn't stop. It felt like Mark was waiting for me more often than not. Every time I stepped into the hallway, there he was. Waiting by the elevator when I came back from lunch breaks, already standing there like he'd been listening for my footsteps. Once, I walked into the lobby after work, and he was sitting on the bench near the mailboxes, pretending to scroll through his phone. As soon as he saw me, he stood up and smiled. That Saturday morning, he knocked again. I opened the door just enough to see his face. He asked if I needed anything from the store, said he was heading out and could grab something for me. I told him no, I was all set. He didn't leave right away. Instead, he leaned against the doorframe and started talking about the water pressure, how the new building manager hadn't fixed the boiler properly. I nodded, barely speaking. After about a minute, I started closing the door slowly. He kept talking until it shut all the way. I waited behind the door. His footsteps didn't retreat. I checked the peephole and saw him still there, just standing, not moving. His face was blank, no smile this time. He didn't leave for another 5 minutes. That night, I didn't even consider the elevator. I used the back stairs and double-checked the lock before going to bed. I didn't sleep much. I'd started sleeping with the hallway light on. A few days later, I realized I hadn't taken out the trash. It was close to midnight. I figured I'd just drop it quickly in the courtyard dumpster. It would take 5 minutes, tops. I left the apartment door closed but didn't lock it. That was the mistake. When I got back and closed the front door behind me, I heard something shift near the closet by the entrance. It was quiet. Just the soft thump of something moving against the wall. At first, I thought one of the jackets had fallen off a hanger. I stepped closer and opened the closet. Mark was crouched inside, knees bent, arms tight against his chest. He was pressed between my winter coats and an old suitcase. His eyes were wide, like he didn't expect me to come back so soon. I froze. He didn't say a word. He just lunged. I screamed and backed away, knocking over a lamp as I turned and sprinted down the hallway. I made it to my bedroom and locked the door, but he slammed against it before I could cross to the bathroom. I twisted the bathroom handle just in time, locking myself inside with shaking hands. My phone was still in my back pocket. I called 911, barely able to get the words out. I told them someone had broken in, that he was still in the apartment. I stayed pressed against the wall with the door locked, listening for footsteps. After a while, the banging stopped. I didn't hear anything at all. That silence was worse than the noise. I kept the line open with the dispatcher until I heard police sirens through the window. Then I heard boots outside the front door, voices calling out, radios crackling. I yelled through the bathroom door to let them know I was in there. When I came out, the apartment door was wide open. Mark was gone. Officers searched every room, then spread out across the building. It took 2 hours, but they found him in his apartment. He was sitting in the dark, fully dressed, keys in his hand. He didn't resist. He didn't say anything either. The detective came back the next day and walked me through what they found. In his apartment, they found dozens of photos, printed out and taped to the walls. Some from the building's hallway cameras. Some clearly taken outside near the clinic where I worked. There were shots of me unlocking my door, waiting for the elevator, walking through the lobby, eating lunch on a bench outside the clinic. I asked how long he'd been taking them. The detective said, "At least 2 months, maybe more." They also found a notebook filled with details, page after page of my routine. What time I left, what I wore, when I used the laundry room. What days I brought groceries home. He had written out guesses too. What unit I'd move to next, where I might park if I got a new car. One officer showed me a small black case they'd found in his kitchen drawer. Inside were lock-picking tools. He had marked practice scratches on the tips of old keys. The scariest part was something the detective told me just before he left. They believed Mark had planned to hide in my closet until I fell asleep. He wasn't there to rob you, the detective said. He waited for the right night. You surprised him. I packed a bag the same night. I didn't even wait for the lease to end. I left the next morning and stayed in a hotel until I found a new place. Different neighborhood, different locks, different floor plan. It's been months now. I check every lock before I sleep. I keep the hallway light on. I never use the same schedule twice. I still think about that closet every time I walk past one. I still hear that click of movement behind the coats. I don't think I'll ever stop. I rented a small house in Portland for 2 weeks in November 2019 while I was starting a new job. It was a quiet residential neighborhood, mostly single-story homes with trimmed hedges and clean sidewalks. The kind of place where nothing weird is supposed to happen. I found the house on a short-term rental site. It was a pale blue bungalow with white trim, built sometime in the 1960s, and had a little wooden porch that creaked when I stepped on it. It wasn't fancy, but it was fully furnished, close to the office, and had a decent kitchen and Wi-Fi. The first 2 nights went by without any issues. I was still getting used to the new job, project manager for a logistics software company. And I was going to bed early, waking up early, sticking to a pretty boring routine. The furnace made some clanking noises when it kicked on, but that was about the only sound I noticed inside the house. Everything else was quiet, still. I actually liked how peaceful it felt compared to the downtown apartment I used to live in. On the third night, I woke up around 2 a.m. I wasn't sure what pulled me out of sleep, but as I lay there, I started hearing a faint thumping from below the bedroom floor. Not loud, but steady. I listened for a few seconds and realized it sounded like footsteps. Slow, deliberate ones. The bedroom was above the basement, and the sound was definitely coming from down there. I sat up and held my breath, trying to figure out if it was something normal. Pipes, maybe. The heating system was probably older than me. I got out of bed, walked softly to the top of the basement stairs, and just listened. The footsteps had stopped. I turned the hallway light on and opened the door. Cold air drifted up from the basement. I flipped the switch for the basement light and waited, but it didn't turn on. Probably burned out. I stood there for a while, staring into the dark stairwell, then closed the door and went back to bed. Told myself it was nothing. Houses make weird noises. The next morning, I got ready for work and didn't think too much about it. At the office, things were normal. Some onboarding meetings, lots of emails set up. By the time I got back to the house, it was already dark. I made dinner and showered, then got ready to go out to dinner with some colleagues. Around 6:30 p.m., I opened the front door and froze. There was a man standing right there at the threshold. He didn't knock, didn't ring the bell. He wasn't walking by. He was just standing there, like he had been waiting for me to open the door. He was middle-aged, maybe late 40s, with thinning gray hair and a long brown coat. His face was blank. No smile, no expression. Just dead eyes looking straight at me. We stared at each other for maybe 3 seconds. Then he gave a small nod. No words, just a nod. And then he turned and walked away. I watched him go down the front walkway, past the sidewalk, and continue down the street. He never looked back. Didn't say anything. I locked the door right away and checked it twice. Looked through the window. He was already gone. There weren't any other pedestrians or cars on the street. I stood there for a minute, trying to decide what to do. I wasn't late yet, so I figured I'd still go meet my coworkers. The place was only a 10-minute drive. Dinner was fine. We talked about the job and our favorite places to eat in town. I didn't mention the guy at my door. I kept thinking about him, though. I couldn't shake how strange the whole thing had been. Maybe he had the wrong address. But why didn't he say anything? Why was he standing that close? I got home around 10 p.m. The porch light was still on. The house looked exactly the same as I had left it. I checked the door again. Still locked. Inside, everything was where I left it. But I felt tense. The kind of low-level nervous energy that you can't really explain. I double-checked the back door and the windows. Nothing seemed disturbed. I tried to tell myself I was just paranoid because I was in a new place. Then, just before heading to bed, I heard it again. The basement. This time, the sounds were clearer. Too clear to dismiss. It wasn't the heating system. It was footsteps. Slow, heavy, uneven, like someone walking with a limp. I stood completely still in the hallway, just listening. The sound moved, across the floor beneath me, then paused. A long pause. I turned the hallway light on and went back to the basement door. I opened it, again. Cold air hit me in the face. The light switch didn't work again. It was pitch black down there. I didn't go down. I didn't call anyone either. I just shut the door, locked it, and put a chair under the knob. Then I went into the bedroom and locked that door too. The noises didn't stop. For the next hour, I sat on the edge of the bed, flashlight in my hand, listening to the soft, deliberate scraping and rattling below me. It wasn't constant, but it would start and stop every few minutes, like whoever was down there was trying different tools or angles. At one point, I heard a loud metallic clank, followed by a low grunt. I couldn't stay inside doing nothing. I grabbed my jacket and flashlight, went out the back door, and walked around the side of the house. There was a separate door to the basement I hadn't paid much attention to before. It was under a small overhang near the back corner of the house, half hidden by overgrown shrubs. When I shined the light on it, I felt my stomach drop. The door was cracked open, just slightly, but enough to notice. I stepped closer and saw deep scratches around the lock, jagged, uneven marks. The kind made by someone forcing something that didn't fit. I looked down at the ground. The soil was damp, and there were muddy footprints, leading up to the door and away into the yard. I followed them with the light. They curved around the back fence, then disappeared into the alley behind the property. I turned around and stared at that open door. I didn't go inside. I shut it and pushed against it until it latched, then shoved a nearby cinder block in front of it. I walked back into the house and locked every door again. Then I called the property manager. Some voicemail answered. I left a message explaining what I found and asked them to call me back right away. No response. I called twice more. Still nothing. So I sat on the couch, with my back to the wall, facing the hallway that led to the basement door, flashlight in one hand and a kitchen knife in the other. I stayed like that until the battery warning on my phone made me realize it was almost 3:30 a.m. By that point, I knew I couldn't wait for some office worker to return my message in the morning. I searched online for emergency security companies and called one that offered 24/7 response. They said they could send 2 guards within the hour. I stayed up, lights on, waiting. The noises had stopped by then, but I wasn't taking any chances. They showed up in a black SUV, uniforms and radios, and took it seriously from the moment I let them in. I showed them the side door and explained everything. The scratches, the footprints, the sounds. One of them stayed upstairs with me while the other went outside to circle the house. A few minutes later, they both met in the basement. I watched them from the top of the basement stairs while they moved around with their flashlights. They didn't say much to each other, but after about 10 minutes, they came back up and told me everything I needed to hear, and didn't want to. Someone had definitely been accessing the basement from that side door. They found old food wrappers, footprints, and more scratch marks, this time on the interior basement door, the one that connected to the rest of the house. There was a screwdriver on the concrete floor, right near the doorway. Fresh metal shavings were scattered under the knob, like someone had been picking at the lock with different tools over several days. The guards said it wasn't a random squatter. Whoever it was had a plan, and it looked like they were steadily working toward getting through that door. To me, I didn't wait. I told the guards I was checking into a hotel, and they helped me bring my bags to the car. I left everything I didn't absolutely need. Before I drove off, they said they'd write up a full report and forward it to the property owner and police, just in case anything turned up. I thanked them and drove straight downtown. Checked into the first hotel with 24-hour service. It was one of those business hotels with a lit-up lobby and staff at the front desk all night. I didn't care about the price. I just wanted to be around people. Doors with dead bolts, rooms without basements. I stayed in that hotel for the rest of my time in Portland. The property management company finally replied to my message 2 days later, said they had no prior issues with the house and couldn't confirm any evidence of unauthorized access. They offered no refund for the unused nights, no apology. I didn't push it. I just wanted to leave the whole thing behind. But I never forgot the feeling of lying in that bed, hearing someone just below me, inching their way closer every night. I kept thinking about that screwdriver, the marks on the door, the silence after the last noise. I realized how close I had come to something worse. Not just a break-in. Whoever was down there hadn't stolen anything. They didn't take tools or food from the basement. They didn't leave through the front. They were trying to come up. Since then, I haven't stayed in a rental again. Not the kind with a basement. Not alone. I always ask about entrances, locks, history. I don't trust quiet neighborhoods. I don't assume a house is empty just because it looks that way. The scariest part wasn't that someone had broken in. It was that they had been there the whole time, under my feet, listening, planning, almost succeeding. I was walking back to my car after shopping at the mall when I noticed an expensive-looking iPhone on the ground right next to my driver's side door. The screen wasn't cracked, no scratches, still in a designer case, one of those luxury brand types with a gold trim. I glanced around to see if anyone was nearby. Maybe someone had just dropped it. But the lot was quiet. Maybe 5 or 6 other cars scattered around, and no one within shouting distance. I picked it up, just standing there holding it, not sure what to do. The screen was locked but lit up, and for a second I debated whether I should just leave it on the hood of my car or walk it over to mall security. Then it started ringing. No name, just a number. I hesitated but figured the owner might be trying to call from another phone, so I answered. The voice on the other end was male, calm, polite. He thanked me for picking up and said the phone belonged to his friend who had lost it earlier in the day. He said his friend was freaking out and asked if I could help get it back to them. I told him I didn't mind, and I asked if his friend was still at the mall. He said no, but he could meet me to pick it up. I figured he'd suggest the parking lot or maybe the entrance to one of the anchor stores. But instead, he asked if I could come to a spot he'd name in a second. There was a pause, like he was thinking, and then he said to meet him at a warehouse parking lot in the industrial district. I asked if it was far, and he said it wasn't more than 15 minutes from where I was. Then he added that it needed to be at 11 p.m. That was the part that didn't sit right. It was just after 5 p.m. when we talked, so I asked if he could do earlier, maybe now or in the next hour. He said he wouldn't be free until late, and that was the only time his friend could meet too. When I asked why it had to be that late and in a place like that, he just repeated that it was the only time that worked and thanked me again for being honest. Then he said, "I'll be driving a black pickup truck. You'll see me." I paused for a moment. The whole thing felt off, but I didn't know what exactly was wrong. Maybe he worked third shift in one of those buildings. Maybe he didn't want to involve the mall staff or police. The phone did look expensive. Maybe he didn't want it going through official channels. I told him okay. I asked him to repeat the address and wrote it down on the back of a receipt in my pocket. He asked me to confirm it one more time, and I read it back. Then he hung up without another word. The whole call lasted maybe 2 minutes. I stood there for a second after the line went dead, holding a phone that wasn't mine and looking around the empty parking lot like something was supposed to happen. But it was just a regular Tuesday evening, warm and dull, fading sunlight bouncing off the windshields. I got in my car with the phone still in my hand. I didn't know what to do with it until later. I placed it in the cup holder and pulled out of the lot. I drove to the warehouse district a few minutes before 11, turning off the main road onto a stretch of cracked pavement lined with old shipping depots and fenced-off lots. Most of the buildings were dark. One had a flickering light above a roll-up door, but everything else was shut down and silent. The place felt dead. There weren't even any other cars parked nearby. I drove slowly into the lot, gravel crunching under my tires, and spotted the black pickup truck idling near the back corner. Tinted windows, no license plate light, engine running but no movement inside. I parked about 50 feet away, angled so my headlights weren't pointing directly at the truck. I expected someone to get out, maybe wave me over, but no one moved. I waited. 1 minute, then 2. I kept glancing in my mirrors, half expecting another car to pull in or someone to step out from behind the buildings. Nothing. The pickup just sat there, engine humming. I reached for the phone in my center console, looked at the lock screen. Still no new calls or texts. The whole thing was starting to feel wrong. I scanned the shadows around the parking lot again. Still no signs of anyone else. But the silence felt loaded now. The kind of silence that meant something was waiting. I turned off my engine to see if the pickup's engine would also cut off. It didn't. I sat still, barely breathing, eyes fixed on the truck. After another minute, I decided I wasn't walking over there. Whatever this was, I wasn't giving them the chance to get close. I took the phone, got out of my car, and walked back toward the entrance to the lot, out where the overhead utility wires crossed above the road and the last bit of dim light from the main street barely reached. I bent down, placed the phone face up on the edge of the lot, and walked back to my car without looking back. I got in, started the engine, and pulled out. As soon as my tires hit the street, I saw the headlights from the pickup swing around and start moving. They pulled out fast, rolling right over the spot where I'd left the phone without slowing down. No one got out to grab it. The truck made the same turn I did, keeping just far enough behind to avoid tailgating. I turned right, then another right, then left. The truck followed every move. My heart started racing. I took another random turn through a residential street lined with parked cars and tall hedges. Still there. I didn't know what their plan was, but I was sure now it had nothing to do with returning a phone. I started running through options. I wasn't going home. That was out of the question. I didn't want them knowing where I lived. I turned again, this time without using my signal, and sped up. The truck stayed with me. I took a hard left through a narrow side street, the kind with uneven pavement and no streetlights. They followed. I cut across a shopping center parking lot, blew through 2 empty intersections, and tried to loop around behind a gas station. I saw their headlights disappear in the rear view for a moment, then reappear again 1 block down. I kept driving like that, turning at random, cutting through alleys, staying off main roads. 10, maybe 12 minutes passed. Then finally, when I pulled into a busier intersection near a pharmacy, I checked my mirror, and they were gone. No headlights, no engine, no trace. I didn't stop. I kept going until I was back on the other side of town. When I finally made it home, I parked 3 streets away just to be sure I wasn't being followed. I walked the last few blocks, checking behind me every few steps. My keys shook when I unlocked the door. I locked it again behind me, deadbolt and all, and stood there in my dark hallway for a minute just breathing. Later that night, after calming down enough to think straight, I sat at my desk and looked it up. Turns out, this wasn't some one-off situation. There were posts and articles about people finding high-end phones or wallets in places like parking lots and grocery store entrances, only to be lured into isolated spots where they'd get robbed or worse. It was called baiting. Sometimes they worked in groups, sometimes alone, always with the same idea. Use something valuable to get someone alone, then strike. That warehouse was never about returning a phone. They didn't care about it. They just needed a believable reason to get someone there at night, away from cameras and people. I never reported it. I didn't have a plate number, no video, no face to identify. Just a black truck and a bad feeling that turned out to be right. Still, I kept checking news reports and local crime alerts for weeks after, half expecting to hear about someone else who wasn't as lucky. I still think about that night every time I see a lost phone in public. I never pick them up anymore. I walk right past, keep my head down, and move on. Some things aren't worth the risk. I decided to spend the weekend camping alone in the Colorado mountains at a spot I'd been visiting for years. It was about a 2-hour drive from where I lived, and I'd usually go there once or twice every summer. There's a patch of flat ground next to a stream, surrounded on 3 sides by dense pine trees, and open to a long, grassy slope that leads down to one of the older trails. It's remote enough that you don't see other people unless you want to, but not so isolated that you'd be completely helpless if something happened. I liked that balance. I parked just before noon, loaded up my backpack, and made the short hike up to my usual spot. By 1, I had the tent up, the food strung up in the tree, and the little fire pit ready with kindling. The weather was dry, the sun was out, and I had a stack of books to read, so I spent most of the afternoon in the camp chair just relaxing. Later, I hiked a few miles along the ridge trail, took some photos, and followed an old logging path back down toward camp. I cooked a basic meal, pasta with a pouch of tuna, washed the pan in the stream, and settled in. The light dropped quick. Out there, it's just a wall of black between the trees when the sun goes down. I had a small lantern hanging inside the tent, and I used my headlamp to check the perimeter. Everything was still. Normal. I was sitting by the fire with a book when I first heard it. Music. Not faint, like someone had earbuds in, loud, clear. It echoed through the trees from somewhere below the slope. I stood up right away. My first thought was that someone had hiked in late and set up nearby, but I hadn't seen anyone on the trail or passed any fresh boot prints earlier. It was weird. The music wasn't foresty or soft. This was electronic. Heavy bass, some kind of dance beat, like it belonged at a club. I couldn't tell the song, just the pulse of it. There's no way someone would carry a speaker that size up here just for the fun of it, not this late. I turned off my lantern to listen better. It didn't sound like it was moving, just sitting in one place, blaring. I told myself it was probably just some college kids messing around, maybe partying farther down near the trailhead. But the curiosity got me. I grabbed my flashlight and started heading downhill, moving carefully through the brush. I followed the sound for about 10 minutes. It was farther than I expected, and I had to cut across some rough patches where the slope dropped off into uneven rock. The light from my headlamp bounced across the trees, picking up flashes of white bark and movement from moths. Then I saw it. A black portable speaker, about the size of a lunchbox, sitting right in the middle of a boulder. Music blaring. But there was nobody around. I scanned the area with my light. Nothing. No tent, no bags, no fire, no voices. Just the speaker, sitting there, like it had been placed intentionally. I walked around it once, keeping my distance. It looked expensive, definitely not something someone would forget or leave behind. Still, I didn't want to touch it. I stood there a while, waiting for someone to come out of the woods or shout or turn it off. But no one came. Eventually, I stepped up and pressed the power button. The music cut off instantly. I backed away again and waited. 5 minutes passed. Still nothing. I didn't want to carry it with me. I didn't need someone accusing me of stealing it. So I left it right where it was and started making my way back up toward my camp. But the woods felt different on the way back. Quieter. I kept swinging my flashlight behind me, expecting to see someone following or standing still between the trees. I told myself again that it was just kids or some hiker trying to spook people for laughs, but it didn't sit right. Somehow, the return walk felt twice as long, even though I was retracing the same path. I kept losing my footing on loose soil and had to stop several times to get my bearings. At one point, I realized I had veered too far to the left and ended up by a cluster of burned stumps I hadn't seen before. I had to loop back, scanning for familiar logs and trail markers. It was maybe 45 minutes before I spotted the dim outline of my tent through the trees. My fire had burned down to coals. I didn't restart it. I zipped myself inside the tent and sat there for a long time, not reading, just listening. The woods had gone still again. Not silent. Just that deep, natural quiet you notice when nothing is moving. I didn't hear the music again. I didn't hear anything. Just the faint rustle of wind through pine needles and the occasional pop from the dying fire. I lay down, but I didn't fall asleep for a long time. When I returned to my tent, I immediately noticed that several items were missing. My camping knife, the one I always kept clipped inside the tent flap, was gone. The small can of pepper spray I'd left next to it was missing too. I stepped outside and checked the supply bag I kept near the fire pit. Half the contents were gone: energy bars, a first aid kit, water purification tablets. I stood there for a moment, scanning the shadows between the trees, but everything was still. I did a quick search around the camp perimeter, sweeping the beam of my flashlight back and forth across the dirt and foliage. No prints I could make out, no broken branches, just the same eerie stillness as before. But I knew then that someone had been here. Someone had waited for me to leave and gone through my stuff with a clear goal in mind. The realization came hard and fast. The music wasn't some careless hiker or weird coincidence. It had been a distraction. They'd lured me away from camp on purpose. I packed up what I could. My hands were shaking as I shoved gear into my backpack. I didn't take time to organize anything. Sleeping bag, stove, flashlight, all jammed together. I just wanted to be moving. The air felt different now, like I was no longer alone. I was halfway through rolling up my sleeping pad when the music started again. This time, it was much closer. It was coming from the ridge just beyond the clearing. The bass thumped in my chest. Whoever it was had moved in while I was packing. My body locked up for a second before instinct kicked in. I snatched my backpack, left the rest, and took off down the trail. The trees closed in fast. I kept my flashlight low, sweeping it across the trail ahead. The music didn't fade like before. It stayed close. I could hear it moving through the forest, weaving alongside me. Not above or behind. Beside me. Whoever was carrying that speaker knew these woods. They knew the shortcuts. Every few seconds I'd hear something crash through the undergrowth. Heavy footsteps snapping branches just off the trail. I didn't look. I just ran. About 15 minutes in, I rounded a bend and saw something stretched across the trail. At first, I thought it was fallen branches, but as I got closer, I saw it was my gear. Everything they'd taken from me, laid out carefully. My knife, the pepper spray, even the missing granola bars, all arranged in a perfect line from one edge of the trail to the other, like a message or a warning. I didn't stop. I didn't touch anything. I jumped over the line and kept going. Behind me, I heard someone moving again. Not running. Walking this time. Slow and steady. Keeping pace without effort. I reached the parking area, gasping for air. My Jeep was right where I left it. I yanked the door open, tossed the bag onto the passenger seat, and jammed the keys into the ignition. The engine took a second too long to turn over. When it finally did, the headlights lit up the trail behind me, and I swear I saw a figure step back into the trees. I didn't wait to confirm it. I threw the Jeep into reverse, spun around, and hit the road without looking back. I never reported what happened. I never contacted park services, never asked if anyone else had complained about loud music or missing gear. It didn't feel like the kind of thing they could help with. This wasn't a bear or a weather event. It was a person. Someone who knew how to use the terrain, who knew how to manipulate fear. Someone who took my things not to steal them, but to make a point. They didn't want to hurt me. Not right away. They wanted me to know they could, anytime they wanted. That was the worst part. I didn't go camping alone again after that. Every trip now, I go with a friend or two. I pick locations where there's phone service and check-ins. I bring backup lights, cameras, even motion sensors. But it's not about gear anymore. That weekend taught me something I didn't want to know. There are people who enjoy the game, who hike deep into the woods not to camp or hunt, but to wait. They watch for solo campers. They use silence and noise, distraction and presence to control your thoughts, to test how close they can get without you noticing. They don't need to hurt you to win. They just need you to remember. And I do. Every time I zip a tent closed, every time I hear a branch snap where it shouldn't, I remember. Some people don't need a reason to terrify you. For them, the fear is enough. The control is the thrill. And they're out there, far enough from the trail that nobody hears a thing. When I was 26, I had a stable routine. I worked from home as a software developer for a logistics firm, nothing flashy. I'd finish up around 5:30 p.m. and head straight to Fitness Plaza, a gym in the same complex where I used to rent office space years before remote work took over. I wasn't particularly outgoing, but I went often enough to recognize a few regulars by face. I'd do my hour, weights on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and cardio the rest, and then walk home with headphones in. One Tuesday night after leg day, I showered, made dinner, and was winding down scrolling through Instagram when I noticed a follow request from someone named Chloe. Her profile said she lived in the city, and her feed was filled with selfies, cocktail pics, and gym mirror shots, the kind you'd expect from someone in their early 20s. The thing that caught my eye wasn't just her looks, though. It was her bio. Bartender at Blue Whale, Fitness Plaza. That second part made me pause. I'd never seen her around, but the gym was big and had 2 floors. It wasn't impossible that I just hadn't noticed her before. She sent a message right after I accepted. "Hey, I think I've seen you at Fitness Plaza. I work late most days, so I'm usually in after 9. That added up. I was always gone by then. We chatted back and forth, casual stuff. She mentioned the squat racks upstairs always being occupied by shirtless dudes who treat every set like a CrossFit championship. That made me laugh because it was dead on. She told me she bartended at Blue Whale downtown, said she'd been there for 6 months, and mentioned the owner by name. Paul, an older guy who I vaguely remembered from when I'd been dragged there once for a friend's birthday. The conversation wasn't overly flirty. She wasn't trying too hard, which made it feel easy. She asked about my job, my workout routine, whether I liked tech work. I gave generic answers. She talked about drunk couples fighting in the bathroom at her bar, how people always tried to pay with fake $100 bills, and how her feet were killing her from 12-hour shifts. It was normal stuff. Comfortable. We messaged every day after that. I didn't think much of it at first, just something to fill time on my lunch break. She'd usually reply in the late mornings and evenings, which made sense given her hours. We shared dumb memes, talked about weekend plans, swapped playlists. She had good taste. Older punk, newer indie, some hip-hop mixed in. It was nice. I don't date much, not because I can't, but because I just don't go out that often. So this thing with Chloe, even though we'd never met in person, started to feel like something I looked forward to. She always said just enough to keep the conversation going without ever oversharing. By the 3rd day, I realized I was checking my phone more than usual, waiting for her messages. She had this way of phrasing things that felt familiar, like we'd known each other longer than 3 days. When I told her I worked remotely, she asked, "That mean you roll out of bed and code in your boxers?" When I said yes, she replied, "Jealous. I'm squeezing limes at 4 p.m. for people who think tips are optional." She didn't ask for anything personal. No phone number, no home address, nothing weird. Just casual conversation. I'd had worse interactions with people I'd actually gone out with. That Friday, around noon, she messaged, "Okay, I have to ask. Are we ever going to actually talk in person, or are we just going to be gym pen pals forever?" I'd been thinking about asking her the same thing. Before I could respond, she followed up. "I'm off Sunday night. Blue Whale has a slow crowd after 9. You should come by. Drinks on me." I hesitated, but not for long. The parking lot across from Blue Whale was dim and cracked, the kind of place that didn't get much attention from the city. The only light came from a flickering street lamp at the far end. I pulled in around 9:50 p.m., parked a few spots down from a black sedan that was already sitting there. The engine wasn't running, but the windows were fogged like someone had been inside for a while. I cut my headlights and checked my phone. Chloe had texted 20 minutes earlier. Off at 10. Meet me by the bench near the entrance. Then another one right after. Actually, I'm parked across from the entrance. Come by my car. I typed a quick reply. You want to just walk over here? No answer. I waited, watching the sedan in my mirrors. No one moved. The bar across the street still had some lights on, but there was no foot traffic, no customers leaving. I sent another message. I'm here. See you soon. A minute later, she replied, Already here, silly. Come to my car. I stared at the screen and felt this tight pull in my chest. Something wasn't right. I looked at the sedan again. No sign of movement, but it suddenly felt like all the air had gone out of the car. I cracked the window and listened. Nothing. Just the faint buzz of the streetlight and some far-off music from the bar. I texted again. Can you wave or something? The typing dots appeared, then disappeared. No reply followed. I looked around. No other cars had pulled in. No pedestrians nearby. Just me and the black sedan. I leaned forward to get a better angle, trying to see if someone was inside. It was too dark. Then I got another message. I'm in the car right in front of you. Just come say hi. That made my skin crawl. I hadn't told her which side of the lot I was on. I hadn't described my car. I hadn't even said I'd arrived. And yet the message said, right in front of you. I didn't get out. I locked the doors instead and kept the engine off. I held my phone and just stared out the windshield. 5 more minutes passed. Nothing. Then the driver's side door of the sedan opened. A man stepped out. He wasn't Chloe. He wasn't even trying to look like her. Just a broad guy in a hoodie and dark pants, hands in his pockets, head low. He started walking, not fast, not aggressive, but straight toward my car. I turned the key, engine fired up immediately. My hands were tight on the wheel, and I didn't hesitate. I put it in reverse, backed out hard, and peeled around the corner, tires screeching as I turned back onto the main road. I didn't stop until I was 2 blocks away. I pulled into a gas station under bright lights, hands still clamped on the steering wheel. I sat there for a while, watching the side mirror like I expected someone to follow. I opened my phone and blocked Chloe's profile. Then I went to her Instagram and reverse searched a few of the photos she'd posted. It took seconds. The pictures weren't hers. They belonged to a fitness influencer from Brazil. Every photo was a repost. The captions were altered, and none of the posts had geotags. The real girl had over 500,000 followers. The account I'd been talking to had under 200 and was barely a month old. I felt sick. Not just because I'd been tricked, but because I'd come so close to walking into something I didn't understand. I didn't know if it was a mugging setup, a kidnapping, or something worse. I'd parked, alone, late at night, in a dead zone with no one around, all because someone said the right things in a DM. I reported the profile, wiped the chat logs, and spent the rest of the night double-checking my social media settings. I changed passwords. I deleted photos with GPS data. And I sat up until nearly 4 a.m., trying to figure out what exactly could have happened if I'd stepped out of my car. I never found out. No police report. No closure. I didn't go back to Fitness Plaza for a week. I started skipping gym sessions. I didn't message anyone new for months. Every time I got a follow request, I checked reverse image sites first. I don't trust those first DMs anymore. Doesn't matter how casual they seem or how much they flatter you. Now when someone says, "Let's meet somewhere quiet," I say no. So when I was in college, I had this hobby of exploring abandoned buildings around town. I'd started an urban exploration blog and needed content for it. It wasn't anything fancy, just a WordPress site with some blurry photos and dramatic captions, but I took it kind of seriously. One afternoon, after I finished class early, I decided to check out this old textile warehouse I found listed on an Urbex forum. It was on the edge of the industrial district, about a 20-minute bike ride from campus. The listing said it had been shut down in the 90s, and from the satellite images, it looked untouched for years. The building was massive, with tall brick walls, broken windows, and a faded sign that just read, Alderson Textiles. A chain-link fence surrounded the lot, but there was a big tear in the back corner, like someone had cut through it with bolt cutters a long time ago. I left my bike hidden behind some bushes and crawled through the gap. The air inside was still and dusty. It smelled like rust and mold and something else I couldn't place. I turned on my flashlight and stepped into the main floor. There were piles of scrap metal, old sewing machines half covered in plastic, torn up office furniture, and beer cans everywhere. Someone had definitely been here before, but it didn't feel recent. I started snapping some pictures. There was this big rusted-out loom in the center of the room that looked straight out of a horror movie, and I figured it'd look cool with the right lighting. The floor creaked under me as I walked around, but it held. I kept moving slowly, watching out for holes, nails, or anything sharp. After about 20 minutes of exploring, I figured I'd gotten what I came for and started heading back to where I came in. That's when I heard music. At first, I thought it was just a car passing outside, but it was coming from inside the building. A scratchy jazz tune, the kind of thing you'd hear on an old vinyl, was drifting from somewhere deeper in the warehouse. I stopped and just listened. It sounded distant, like it was coming from behind one of the walls or another room I hadn't seen yet. I figured it was probably a portable radio, maybe someone squatting here or some kids hanging out. I stood there for a minute, considering whether I should just leave, but my curiosity got the better of me. I followed the sound through the maze of debris and old machinery. The music grew louder as I reached the back of the warehouse. I passed a set of rusted lockers, a crumbling staircase leading to a caved-in mezzanine, and then I saw something that made me stop. In the far corner of the building, someone had constructed a kind of room. It wasn't made of wood or bricks, just layers of thick, clear plastic sheeting hung from the ceiling to form 4 walls, the kind you see in meatpacking plants or hospital quarantine rooms. The light inside was dim and flickering, and the music was definitely coming from in there. I couldn't see much through the plastic except shadows and movement, maybe someone pacing, or maybe just the light shifting behind the sheeting. The hair on my arms stood up. I crouched and moved closer, keeping to the shadows. About 5 feet from the corner of the makeshift room, I saw an extension cord snaking out from under the plastic and disappearing behind a stack of broken pallets. That meant someone had rigged electricity in here somehow. I stood still for a long time, trying to figure out what I was looking at. No voices, no footsteps, just the jazz looping softly. I took one cautious step forward, then another. The sheeting swayed slightly with the air, giving me a better view. Inside, there was a folding table with what looked like old paper files stacked in neat piles, a single metal chair, a mattress rolled up in one corner. Hanging from the plastic walls were several Polaroids. I could just make out faces on some of them. Faces of people. All different, some blurry, all pinned up with pieces of masking tape. I didn't breathe. I was trying to decide whether to look closer or just turn around and get out. But then the light inside flickered harder, and I saw a figure sitting in the chair. They were motionless. facing the wall, just sitting perfectly still. I hadn't noticed them before. My heart started pounding. I hadn't made any noise, I was sure of it. But something about the way they were sitting felt wrong, like they were waiting. I stepped back as quietly as I could. My foot hit something soft, maybe a piece of insulation, and made a dull crunch. Inside the room, the figure moved. Just a little. Just enough to let me know they weren't asleep. I turned and started backing away, careful not to trip. The music kept playing. No sudden sounds, no yelling. Just that calm, creepy jazz. I reached the corner, turned once, and then started walking fast, retracing my steps to the front. I didn't run. I didn't want to draw attention. I just moved as fast as I could without making too much noise. I reached the entrance and ducked back through the hole in the fence. The sunlight hit my face, and it felt like waking up from a dream. I didn't stop to take another look. I got on my bike and rode straight back to my apartment. I haven't posted those photos. I haven't even opened the camera folder since. I pushed aside the plastic and stepped inside. The space was warmer than the rest of the building, heated by a small propane unit in the corner. The floor had been swept clean. There were 4 folding chairs arranged in a circle around the heater, each perfectly aligned like someone had spent a lot of time positioning them. On the floor near the chairs were 2 small boxes, one filled with protein bars and water bottles, the other with trash neatly bagged up. No smell, no clutter. Someone had taken care to keep this place controlled. What caught my attention immediately were the walls. The plastic sheeting wasn't just clear, it had been used like a canvas. Dozens of photographs had been taped to it in perfect rows, edge to edge. They were all cut from magazines, glamour shots, advertisements, fashion spreads, all of young women, all smiling, all looking directly at the camera. I moved closer, drawn to the pattern even though something inside me told me to leave. Some of the clippings had writing on them. Black marker, names, ages, cities. Claire, 23, Omaha. Nina, 21, Austin. Brooke, 19, Denver. Some had question marks next to them. Others were underlined or circled. In the back corner of the space, near the rolled-up mattress, there were more boxes. I opened one and found a stack of manila folders. Each one had a name written on the tab. Inside were what looked like printouts from social media pages, profile pictures, screenshots of posts, and in some, what looked like home addresses scribbled in the margins. It was too much to process all at once. The careful arrangement, the heater, the food, the photos, the folders. This wasn't a squatter's setup. This wasn't about shelter. It looked like someone had built a workspace, a private room to focus on something specific, something meticulous. And it wasn't random. I took a slow breath and turned toward the entrance, thinking I should leave before whoever was behind this came back. But something pulled me back to the boxes. I crouched and opened another. This one was filled with ID cards. Dozens. All different names. Student IDs, library cards, even a few state licenses. Some were worn like they'd been carried around for a while. Others were in Ziploc bags. I picked one up and read the name. It didn't mean anything to me, but the photo matched one of the magazine clippings taped to the wall. That's when it hit me. These weren't just pages torn from catalogs. These were real people. The photographs had been chosen because they matched the women in these documents. Or maybe it was the other way around. I didn't know. I stood up too fast and bumped into one of the chairs. It tipped over and hit the plastic wall with a thud. I froze. Nothing. Silence. But now I felt it. Pressure in the air. like I wasn't alone in the building anymore. I didn't hear a door, but I couldn't shake the feeling someone was on the other side of the sheeting, standing in the dark like I had been minutes before. I listened, but all I could hear was the soft whir of the heater and the faint hum of that old jazz still playing somewhere outside the room. I stepped backward, carefully, eyes fixed on the entrance. I didn't bother setting the chair back up. I reached the edge of the plastic and pulled it aside. The warehouse looked darker than before. I took a step out, then two, then started moving fast. Quiet, but fast. I didn't stop to look around. I didn't listen. I just moved. When I reached the front hall, I broke into a full run. I burst through the broken door, out into the cold, and didn't stop until I was on the other side of the fence, panting. My bike was still there, hidden under the bush. I grabbed it, hands shaking so bad I dropped my keys twice trying to unlock the chain. When I finally got moving, I didn't look back. I rode home like I was being chased. I never went back to that warehouse. A few weeks later, I saw in the local news that the city had approved permits to tear down several buildings in that district, including the textile warehouse. By the end of the month, it was gone, replaced by an empty lot, and then, eventually, a discount mall. I didn't tell anyone what I found. I thought about it a few times, even drafted an anonymous tip email to the police, but I never sent it. I kept thinking, maybe it was just some guy's weird obsession. Maybe none of those IDs were real. Maybe it was all performance art or something. But that didn't explain the names, the folders, the addresses, the way everything was labeled and arranged like it meant something. Sometimes I wonder if anyone else ever found that room. Maybe one of the demo crew walked through it before it got bulldozed. Maybe they saw what I saw. Maybe they didn't care. Or maybe they did, and I just never heard about it. But the thing I think about most are the photographs. All those young faces staring out through the plastic, smiling like they didn't know what was coming. Every once in a while, I'll see someone in a crowd or on the street that looks just like one of them, and for a second, my stomach drops. I'll think, is that her? Is she okay? I don't explore abandoned places anymore. That part of my life ended that day. And even though I've tried to forget it, that room still shows up in my dreams. Clean, silent, warm, and filled with faces that never stop looking at me. It happened in October 2018 when I was 20 and working part-time at a downtown cafe. I usually finished my shift around 5:30 and caught the 6:05 bus home from the stop just outside the building. It was a short walk, less than a block, but that day it was already getting dark by the time I left. The air had that early cold snap that hits in fall, and I remember hurrying a bit, pulling my hoodie tighter as I stepped outside. There were only two other people at the bus stop, both older women talking quietly, so I stood a few feet away, checking my phone and trying not to let the cold get to me. After a couple minutes, I noticed a gray sedan pass by the stop. It didn't register as anything strange at first, just traffic. But then it passed again in the opposite direction maybe 30 seconds later. Then again, slower, coming from the same side as before. I remember thinking maybe the guy was lost or looking for a parking spot. People did that all the time in that part of downtown, especially on game nights. But when my bus pulled up and the other two women started boarding, the gray sedan pulled in right next to the stop and the driver rolled down his window. "Hey," he called out, leaning over the passenger seat. "You know where the closest gas station is?" He looked like a normal guy. Mid-40s, maybe early 50s, clean-shaven, dark jacket, short hair. He smiled in a friendly way and didn't seem threatening. I leaned down a bit and pointed up the street. "Just keep going north," I said. "It's on the left after the third light." "Ah, okay, great. Thanks," he said. "You from around here?" I said, "Yeah, I worked nearby." Figured he was just being chatty. But instead of saying thanks and driving off, he asked where I worked. I said, "Just a cafe down the block." He nodded, then asked if I was a student. I said, "Yeah, part-time at the college." The conversation didn't stop. He asked what I was studying, how long I'd lived in the city, if I liked it here. I was polite, trying not to be rude, but it was getting uncomfortable fast. The bus doors were still open, and the driver was waiting for the last couple of people to board. I stepped up onto the bus and mumbled something like, "I should go," and found a seat halfway down on the left side. From my window, I watched the gray sedan pull into traffic. I figured he'd turn up the next street toward the gas station. But as the bus moved, I saw that he didn't turn. Instead, he stayed behind the bus, keeping a steady pace. At first, I told myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe he needed to head in the same direction. Maybe he didn't see the gas station. I kept glancing back every so often as the bus moved through downtown traffic. The gray sedan didn't pass us. It didn't pull over. It just stayed 2 car lengths behind, always in the same lane. Stop after stop, it stayed back. Every time the bus paused to let someone off, the sedan slowed. When we sped up, it sped up. It never turned. My heart started racing a little as we got farther from downtown. I watched as he followed us past familiar intersections, past the grocery store I sometimes walked to, past the light where most cars usually turn to get on the highway. Still 2 car lengths back. I tried to see the driver's face again, but the angle of the streetlights in the rear window made it hard. I thought about texting someone but didn't want to sound paranoid. The bus was half full now. People were quiet, looking at their phones, reading, or staring out the windows. I turned around once in my seat, trying not to be obvious, just enough to check if the car was still there. It was. We were getting close to my stop now. I had a sudden thought. If I got off and he did too, or if he pulled over, I'd walk straight to the gas station near my stop and ask someone for help. I didn't want to go home with someone following me. I tightened the strap on my bag, watched the bus driver's mirror, and waited. At the next stop, 2 people got off. I stayed seated. The car slowed behind us and stopped too. Then the bus moved again, and so did the sedan. It was only 2 more stops to mine. My palms were sweating, and I hadn't even realized I'd been gripping my phone tightly in my lap. We turned off the main road into a quieter residential street. There were no other cars behind us now. Just the gray sedan. The driver didn't try to pass. When the bus slowed at my stop, I stayed in my seat, pretending to check my bag. No one else was getting off. I wanted to see what the sedan would do. As soon as the bus pulled to the curb, the sedan did too. It didn't just idle down the street. It parked right behind the bus, engines still running. I saw the glow of the headlights in the side mirror. I stayed still, waiting. The doors opened. No one moved. After maybe 20 seconds, the sedan suddenly pulled out and kept driving, slowly. I leaned toward the window and watched it roll past the bus, and then speed up a little as it turned at the end of the street. I waited for the doors to close, and then I told the driver I had missed my stop. I stayed on the bus for 3 more stops before getting off in a better lit area with a 24-hour diner and called my roommate to pick me up. I decided not to get off at my usual stop and waited until the bus reached the shopping mall. It was a larger hub, with cameras, lights, and uniformed security guards near the entrances. I stood up when we pulled in and kept my eyes on the back window as we turned into the parking loop. The gray sedan followed us in. I stayed calm, got off, and walked directly toward the mall's main doors, joining a small flow of people heading inside. As I crossed the pavement, I saw the sedan park off to the side. The driver's door opened, and Tom stepped out. He didn't call out my name or wave. He just walked toward me with his hands in his jacket pockets like he'd just happened to be there. I kept walking, but he closed the distance fast. "Hey," he said, smiling. "You got off a bit farther than your usual stop. Need a lift home?" I didn't answer at first. I turned slightly and said, "No thanks. I'm meeting friends." He nodded, still smiling. "It's getting dark. Lot of weirdos out here. You sure you don't want to ride?" "I really don't mind." I repeated myself, more firmly this time. "I'm good. They're already inside." He stopped walking for a second. Then he caught up again, his smile a little tighter. "It's not safe out here for someone like you. A lot can happen between here and home." I turned sharply and faced him. I said, "No. Please stop following me." His face changed then. His eyes stayed on mine, but the fake friendliness was gone. His voice dropped low. "You're being difficult for no reason," he said. "I'm just trying to help. But if you really want to make this hard, I'll find out where you live eventually." It was the way he said it. Flat. Calm. Like a promise. Like it was already decided. I turned away and walked faster. The glass mall doors were 10 feet ahead, and just inside I saw the security desk. A uniformed guard looked up as I pushed through the entrance. I didn't wait for him to ask if I needed help. I pointed out toward the parking lot and told him that a man had followed me off the bus and was waiting near the lot. I gave the plate number quickly, having repeated it to myself the whole ride. The guard signaled to another man by the far exit, and they both walked with me back out the doors. But Tom was gone. The car was no longer where it had been. The spot was empty. I turned in circles, scanning rows of parked vehicles, but the gray sedan was nowhere in sight. The guards asked for a description, wrote down what I said, and one of them radioed someone. I don't know if it was mall management or the police, but they said they'd file a report. They made sure I felt safe and asked if I wanted someone to wait with me until my friends arrived. I thanked them and stayed inside the mall until my roommate came to get me. I didn't hear anything else for a while. But a couple weeks later, I got a call from an officer. They followed up on the report and said I'd done the right thing. There had been other complaints, different women, same kind of car, similar story. One of them said a man had followed her through a parking garage and tried to grab her arm. Another had seen the gray sedan parked outside her workplace 3 days in a row. Each story sounded too close to mine. Same middle-aged guy. Same polite act at first. Always a parking lot. Always offering help. Eventually, the police tracked the car down. The guy's name wasn't even Tom. He'd given fake names to everyone. They arrested him at his apartment across town after staking out the address tied to the plate number. They didn't say what charges they were filing, but one officer mentioned there was enough evidence from multiple reports to hold him. I never heard what came after that. I didn't want to know. What mattered was, I'd gotten off that bus. I'd gone somewhere public. I'd listened to that feeling in my gut that something was wrong. I thought for a long time afterward about what could have happened if I just smiled and said yes when he offered a ride. If I'd stepped into that car and let the door shut behind me. Maybe nothing. Maybe he really was just lonely and strange. But it didn't feel like that. Not after the way he changed when I said no. I don't walk alone at night anymore if I can help it. And I never second-guess that tight feeling in my chest when something feels off. I think about that gray sedan sometimes. I think about the other girls who said no too. I'm just glad we all did. Glad we all. I was working night shifts at a roadside motel called Sunset Inn to pay for college. It wasn't the worst job, honestly. Most nights were dead quiet. I sat in the little front office with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, doing homework behind a scratched-up reception desk. There was a thick glass window separating me from the lobby area, and a buzzer to let guests in. After the first few nights, I got used to the sounds. The soft hum of vending machines, the occasional truck downshifting on the highway, and sometimes the ice machine clanking out cubes like it was falling apart. The manager, Rick, showed me everything I needed to know during training. All cash transactions went into a small safe behind the desk. There was a back room with a cot and mini fridge in case I wanted to nap. Guests came and went, mostly long-haul truckers or people passing through. I got used to their tired faces and brief small talk. One thing Rick always told me: never leave the office unless absolutely necessary. That glass and lock are your best friends, he said. It was a Thursday night, a little past midnight, when the man came in. I remember because I was halfway through an econ chapter I didn't understand and kind of glad for the distraction. He looked about 50, maybe older, with a graying beard and a windbreaker zipped all the way to his neck. He had the kind of face you forget 2 minutes after you see it. Neutral, quiet, maybe just tired. He handed me $50 in cash and asked for a room. I gave him 23. It was on the far end of the single-story strip of rooms. I slid the key through the tray under the glass, pointed out the direction, and he nodded without saying much. Then he walked out into the night. I buzzed the door shut behind him and went back to my book. I didn't think about him again until maybe 10 minutes later when I heard the buzzer again. Same guy. I looked up and he gave me a half smile, then held the key up between 2 fingers. I pressed the button to unlock the door and he stepped inside. "Hey," he said. "Key's not working." I motioned for him to pass it through the tray and looked it over. It was one of those old metal keys on a heavy plastic tag. I asked him if he tried turning it both ways. "Yeah," he said. Jiggled it, turned both directions, even pushed the door. Nothing. I asked if he was sure he was at the right door, and he nodded. "Yeah." I moved my bags in, tried locking it once, but it wouldn't catch. Went out to get something from the car, and now it won't open at all. I considered giving him another room. That would have been the simple solution. But he said all his stuff was already inside, and he looked impatient, like he wanted the night to just be over. I looked at the monitor showing the outdoor camera, just empty asphalt and a flickering overhead light near room 23. I hesitated. Then I grabbed the spare master key and stood up. "You sure it's broken?" I asked. "Yeah." Doesn't even turn now. I almost offered him another room again, but the idea of him demanding we fish all his bags out or bust the door made me think twice. I told myself it was fine. It was a 2-minute walk to the room. No one else was around. I could see the entire parking lot through the cameras. "All right," I said. "I'll take a look." I stepped out of the office, the glass door locking behind me. The night air hit me like cold smoke, dry and quiet except for the buzzing of that one broken light near the end. I followed behind him, my sneakers making soft crunches on the gravel. As we passed room 19, I noticed the curtains were closed tight and no light came from inside. Most of the rooms were like that. I think there were only 3 cars in the whole lot. He walked slow, like he wasn't in a hurry anymore. Room 23 was at the far end, near a fence that separated the motel from an empty lot with overgrown weeds and rusted-out equipment. He stepped aside and let me try the key first. It slid in fine, but he was right. It wouldn't turn. I tried jiggling it, then pressing the door in harder, but nothing gave. "See?" he said behind me. "Told you." "Yeah," I muttered. I looked closer at the lock. It wasn't damaged. No scratches or tool marks, no sign of someone trying to force it. It just didn't want to turn. "You sure it worked earlier?" "Yeah. Moved my bag in. Door shut fine. But now it's jammed." I nodded and pulled the master key from my pocket. The tag said, Master A. I slipped it into the lock and tried slowly turning it. Still nothing. I pushed in harder, twisted it, felt it catch slightly, and then the whole thing just locked tight again. I leaned closer, noticing the key felt warmer than it should have. I turned to tell him I'd have to get a new cylinder when I realized he'd stepped back, maybe 10 feet away, hands in his jacket pockets, not watching the door but watching me. "Did you hear anything weird after you checked in?" I asked, just making conversation. "No," he said. "Didn't even turn the TV on." His voice was flatter now, less tired and more dull. I looked at him again. Something about the way he stood, feet slightly apart, chin down, eyes not blinking, made me more aware of how far we were from the office. I turned back to the door and tried the key one more time, just to buy a few seconds. It was pointless. The lock was stuck. I took a step back and let out a breath. "All right," I said. "I'll get you a different room. I'll walk back and bring a key." "I'll come with you," he said quickly. I paused. "No need. I'll bring it to you." "I'll come," he said again. He didn't wait. He started walking, past me, back toward the front. I stood there for a second, then followed. We walked to the far wing of the building where room 23 was located. The area was poorly lit and dead quiet, far from the main lot and office. A single yellow bulb flickered above the doorway, and the rest of the hall was shadows. I stepped up first and tried the key again, expecting it to stick like before. But this time it turned smoothly. The knob clicked, and the door swung open without resistance. I started to say something about how the locks sometimes jam if the weather changes, but I didn't even finish the sentence. The man suddenly shoved me from behind, hard. I stumbled into the room, hitting my shoulder on the wall. Before I could catch my balance, I heard the door slam shut behind me. Then came the sound of the lock turning. Fast, nervous clicks. My heart jumped and I spun around. He had his back to the door, trying to twist the lock in place. There was no doubt about it now. He was trying to trap me inside. The room was narrow and dim, with just a single wall lamp casting a faint glow across the bed. I moved without thinking, reaching into the front pocket of my hoodie. My fingers closed around the canister of pepper spray. Training had drilled it into me. If anything ever felt wrong, don't hesitate. Act fast. I pulled the canister out, flicked the safety, and sprayed straight at his face. The stream hit him square in the eyes. He screamed, loud and raw, and dropped to his knees, clawing at his face. The door was half locked, but not dead-bolted. I pushed past him hard enough that he collapsed sideways. I twisted the knob, yanked the door open, and bolted into the night. I ran full speed down the walkway, past the empty rooms, past the flickering lights. I could still hear him behind me, screaming in pain. His voice echoed down the row of doors, sharp and angry. My lungs burned as I sprinted through the gravel lot, heart pounding in my ears. The front office felt a mile away. I shoved open the door, slammed it behind me, and hit the deadbolt. Then I grabbed the phone and dialed the number taped to the wall. "Security emergency," I said, out of breath. "Room 23. Guy attacked me. He's still back there." The dispatcher on the other end kept their voice calm. They asked my name, location, and told me to stay put. I locked the lobby entrance and turned off the lights. The desk light glowed weakly in the corner. I crouched behind the counter, still holding the pepper spray, even though my hands were shaking. The cameras showed the back lot. Room 23's door was wide open now, but the man was gone. I stared at the feed, waiting to see him again, but nothing moved. Just empty rooms and night wind. Security pulled in maybe 10 minutes later, headlights cutting across the lot. 2 officers in dark uniforms stepped out, one with a flashlight, the other already talking into a radio. I ran to the door, let them in, and pointed them toward the back wing. They checked the room and came back to say it was empty. But I hadn't imagined it. Not the shove, not the door slamming, not the way he'd tried to lock it. "He's gone," one of them said. "But we'll pull the camera footage. You said he drove?" I nodded. "White van. I didn't see it pull in, but I bet it's on the lot camera." We checked the screen together. A few minutes before he came to the desk the first time, a white van had turned in from the highway and parked at the far edge, just outside the camera's center field. When he fled, it showed him running toward it, climbing in, and peeling off. The plate was visible, just barely. One of the security guys snapped a photo of the screen with his phone and called it in. Police showed up maybe 20 minutes later. I told them everything again, this time slower, while one officer took notes. Another reviewed the camera footage with security, zooming in on the plate, then running it through dispatch. They got a hit. The van was registered out of state, Nevada plates, owner with a record, assault, trespassing, multiple warrants. The officer nodded and said something into his radio. They left soon after that, and I was alone again. About an hour later, just as I was debating whether to leave early, the phone rang. It was the police. They found him. Pulled him over at a truck stop 20 miles away. He'd washed his face, but they found pepper spray residue and the same clothes he'd been wearing on the footage. The van matched. He didn't resist. Turned out, he'd been hitting small motels like ours across 3 states. Posing as a customer, using different cash names, always checking in late. He waited for quiet places, weak cameras, and staff working alone. They were still connecting the dots, but he'd already been flagged in 2 other towns. The next day, my manager called me in. He looked pale, more than usual, and said we'd be changing procedures. 2 staff on duty at night, more lights, more cameras, no exceptions. Then he looked at me, dead serious. "You did everything right," he said. "Spray saved you. You're lucky you didn't hesitate." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. I stayed quiet most of the meeting. Took my last check and told him I wasn't coming back. I packed my things into a backpack that afternoon. School could wait. Rent could wait. I needed time to breathe. Because that door, room 23, I kept thinking how close it came to closing behind me. How fast everything normal became something else. How a quiet job behind glass, in a building that never felt unsafe before, suddenly wasn't safe at all. I never went back to Sunset Inn, not even to say goodbye. Some jobs aren't worth the money. Some people aren't worth trusting. And some doors, once they close, don't open again. The rain was coming down hard, beating against the windows like handfuls of thrown gravel. I had the volume low on the TV so I could hear the storm, not because I liked it, just because it made the house feel less empty. Around 9 p.m., my phone rang. The screen showed a local number I didn't recognize. I let it ring once, considered ignoring it, then picked up. Hello? Nothing. I stood there holding the phone, listening. There wasn't total silence, though. I could hear wind and rain, not from outside my house, but through the speaker. Same storm, same rhythm of water hitting pavement. Distant thunder rolled in the background. It wasn't a recording. Too natural. Too real. I waited about 30 seconds, saying nothing. Eventually I hung up, figured it was a butt dial from someone nearby. Still, it stuck with me. There was something uncomfortable about hearing my own weather echoing back at me like that. I checked my doors, locked as always, curtains drawn, nothing out of place. The power flickered twice just after 10 but stayed on, so I went back to my show. But I couldn't concentrate. I kept looking at my phone like it was going to ring again. Something about that call had me uneasy. Not scared exactly, but off. Like I just missed something important and couldn't figure out what. At 10:18, the power went out completely. No warning flicker, no buzzing hum, just gone. I gave it a full minute before deciding it wasn't coming right back. I got up, turned on the flashlight on my phone, and went to the basement to check the breaker. The basement light switch clicked uselessly. I stepped slowly, watching where I aimed the light. The concrete floor was cold under my socks, and everything smelled faintly like damp cardboard. The breakers hadn't tripped. Everything was fine down there. I stood still for a second, listening, then headed back upstairs. I took the long way back up so I'd pass by the kitchen. There's a small window over the sink that looks out into the backyard. I wasn't expecting to see anything, but I glanced anyway. There was a man standing in the yard. He wasn't near the door or the fence, just in the middle of the grass, getting soaked in the downpour. He wasn't moving, not even shifting his weight, just standing dead still like he'd been placed there. A street light from the alley behind my house lit up part of the yard, enough that I could make out what he was wearing. Dark jacket, something bulky. His hand was up near his ear, holding something. I squinted. A phone. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. Same number. Same local area code. I backed away from the window. I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, watching the man not move. His head wasn't tilted toward me, but it also wasn't looking away. I couldn't tell if he was facing me or not. The window glass was fogged slightly, and I didn't want to get closer. The phone kept vibrating. I slid my thumb over the screen to answer and raised it to my ear. Again. Silence, except for the sound of the storm. This time it was clearer. I could hear wind on the line, water dripping near the phone's microphone, and a strange creaking sound, like wood under stress. I stared through the window. The man hadn't moved at all. I stepped back into the hall and quietly ended the call. I didn't want to speak. I didn't want to make any noise at all. My heart was pounding hard and fast in my ears, and my hands were suddenly sweating. I turned off the flashlight, let my eyes adjust to the dark, moved slowly to the front window by the door, and looked out toward the street. Empty. No car. No one walking by. Everything was slick and shiny with rain, but silent. I went to the kitchen again, crouched low this time so only my eyes barely cleared the windowsill. The man was still there. His phone arm was down now, but he still wasn't moving otherwise. His clothes were soaked, dark and heavy with water. His head was still at the same angle, and I still couldn't tell if he was looking toward me. Then he moved. Just his arm. He raised it slowly, phone in hand, and pointed it at the house. My phone started ringing again. I watched him through the window as he slowly lowered the phone from his ear. At the same moment, mine stopped ringing. It wasn't a coincidence. My stomach dropped and I felt the knife-sharp realization that this guy had been calling me, right there, from my own backyard. He had a perfect view of my house, of me, of everything. My phone lit up again. Same number. I didn't answer. I kept my eyes locked on him. He brought his phone back to his ear. He wasn't hiding anymore. He wasn't rushing. He was calm, calculated, just standing there, staring at my house, making the phone ring, like he was testing me, seeing how long I'd wait. After a few more rings, he took the phone down again. Then he started walking. He didn't rush, just moved deliberately across the yard, through the rain, straight toward the house. I stepped back from the window, trying to keep my breath quiet, my feet silent on the tile. The moment he turned the corner of the house and out of my line of sight, I bolted from the kitchen. I didn't know if he was going to the front or side, but I wasn't going to wait to find out. I grabbed the biggest kitchen knife I had from the drawer, one with a black handle and a wide blade. My hands were slippery with sweat and the grip felt wrong, too light. I backed into the hallway and pulled out my phone. Dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? There's a man outside my house. He's trying to get in. He's calling my phone and walking around. He was just in my backyard. The dispatcher stayed calm, asked for my address, then told me an officer was nearby and would arrive in under 5 minutes. She told me to stay on the line, stay quiet, and stay inside. Then the pounding started. It wasn't a knock. It was full force, shoulder or fist, hitting the door hard enough to rattle the hinges. Each strike made the walls shake. I crouched down in the hallway, clutching the phone and knife, trying not to make a sound. My phone rang again. The vibration was silent in my hand, but I could hear the exact same ring coming from the other side of the front door. His phone. He was standing right there calling me again. Calling me while slamming his weight into my door. He's at my front door, I whispered. He's trying to break in. He's calling me through the door. I can hear it. I've notified the responding officer, she said. They're turning onto your street now. The pounding continued, faster now. I could hear the wood of the door starting to split. I thought about running, but I didn't know where to go. The back was locked. The basement was pitch dark. My only move was to wait. Then, suddenly, silence. The pounding stopped all at once. A second later, headlights swept across my living room windows. I peeked around the corner just enough to see the glow of the patrol car in my driveway. Red and blue lights flashing across the wet walls. By the time the officer got to the door, the man was gone. The cop was mid-30s, calm, professional. He walked the perimeter of the house twice with his flashlight, checked between fences, under bushes, even behind the neighbors' trash bins. Nothing. The rain had mostly washed away the footprints in the grass, but we found clear wet prints on the wooden boards of the porch. Deep heel marks near the door. We both saw where the frame had cracked near the lock. I told him everything. The calls, the figure in the yard, the fact that he must have been watching the house, knew when the power went out, when I answered my phone, when I moved. He listened, took notes, asked questions in a steady voice. When I gave him the number, he wrote it down and made a call to the station. They called back later that night. The number was from a prepaid burner phone. No name, no address, no ID. Probably already in a dumpster somewhere by the time we were talking. The officer filed a full report and said they'd increase patrols in the neighborhood for the next week. They even parked a cruiser at the end of my street for a few nights. Nothing else happened. No more calls. No more strange noises. But I didn't sleep well for a long time. Weeks passed, then months. I replaced the front door with something stronger. I added a camera to the porch. I started checking every window before bed. Always made sure my backyard light stayed on. Storms still make me nervous. The sound of rain tapping on glass isn't just weather to me anymore. It's a reminder that someone out there, someone who didn't know me, didn't want anything from me, spent his night watching, waiting, and trying to scare the hell out of a stranger for no reason. That's the part that's hard to live with. The randomness. He didn't want money. He didn't speak. He didn't even try to break in when the cops showed up. He just left. Some people do it for fun. That's the worst part. When I was 14, my parents left me to babysit my 2 younger sisters and 8-year-old brother Tyler while they went to a company party. We lived in a 2-story house on the edge of the suburbs, the last row before the woods started. The kind of neighborhood where you didn't worry much about locking your doors, at least back then. That night, a heavy snowstorm moved in fast. By the time it was dark, the wind was howling, and the snow was already thick on the ground. My parents called at around 10. They said the roads were too bad to drive, so they booked a room at a hotel near the restaurant. My dad told me to keep the doors locked, and they'd be back first thing in the morning. I got the girls to bed by 11. Tyler wanted to stay up and watch TV, so I let him sit on the couch while I cleaned up the kitchen. I kept glancing out the window above the sink. The snow was blowing sideways. It was stacking up on the back deck and climbing the sliding glass door. Everything outside looked soft and white, but the wind made it feel like something was pressing against the house, waiting. Tyler kept asking when Mom and Dad would be back. I told him they were fine, they'd be home early, and we'd probably sleep through it. Just after midnight, we both jumped at the sound of shattering glass. It was loud, like a plate breaking right behind you. I looked toward the living room. The big picture window facing the front yard was cracked wide open. A gust of snow blew into the room, swirling against the light from the TV. In the middle of it, a black-gloved arm reached through the broken glass. I could see fingers fumbling with the window latch. Tyler screamed. He turned and ran for the stairs, yelling for our sisters. I couldn't move. I was frozen in the middle of the kitchen, watching a man try to pull himself through the window into our house. He struggled, probably cut himself on the glass. His coat kept catching on the broken frame. He didn't expect anyone to be awake. That was clear. I could see him now. A dark ski mask, heavy winter coat, shoulders broad, but his movements were panicked. His head came through first. I watched him pause halfway inside, looking around like he was checking if the room was empty. His eyes locked on mine. He blinked, startled, and hesitated. I turned and ran. I didn't say anything. I just sprinted past the dining room and up the stairs 2 at a time. I could hear glass crunching behind me. No words, no sound from him, just the hard scrape of boots on the hardwood floor. Tyler was standing outside our sister's room, both hands on the knob, trying to pull it closed while one of the girls cried inside. I shoved him out of the way and slammed the door shut. Then I turned the lock and backed up, heart racing, listening. There were footsteps downstairs, heavy ones. Then silence. I motioned for the kids to stay quiet. The bedroom was small. Just a dresser, a twin bed, and a toy shelf. I pulled the girls behind me into the corner farthest from the door. Tyler crouched next to me, holding my arm so tight it hurt. None of us spoke. Then we heard the stairs creak. One step, then another. Slow, measured. He wasn't rushing. He was checking the house now. He must have figured we were upstairs. I scanned the room. There was no way out except the door and a single window too small for anyone to fit through. I picked up a plastic toy bat from the corner. It was all I could find. It felt like nothing in my hand. Completely useless. The footsteps stopped at the top of the stairs. The hallway floor groaned. One of the girls whimpered, and I pressed my finger to my lips. Then, the doorknob rattled. Just once. A quiet metallic click as someone tested the lock. We all froze. Tyler buried his face in my shoulder. The man didn't knock. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, holding the knob, turning it gently like he was thinking about forcing it open. I could hear his breathing, short, angry bursts. He let go, and the knob stopped moving. After that, nothing. No more steps. No more noise. We sat there in silence, waiting for something. Anything. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I crawled across the carpet and put my ear to the door. I couldn't hear him anymore. I waited another full minute, then turned to the others and whispered, "Stay here. Don't move. Don't unlock this door for anyone but me." I stood, gripping the plastic bat, and unlocked the door as quietly as I could. I opened it an inch and peeked out. The hallway was empty. The bathroom door was closed, but everything else was still. I moved slowly, trying not to make the floor creak. At the top of the stairs, I crouched and looked down. The front door was open. Snow had blown in across the floor, mixing with blood. Not much, but enough to track. A faint trail led back to the broken window. The man was gone. I snapped out of my shock and ran upstairs after Tyler. I found him in our parents' bedroom, crouched in front of the gun safe. The carpet around him was scattered with papers and socks where he'd pulled drawers open to find the keys. He had the safe open now, Dad's hunting rifle already in his hands. He looked up at me, face pale but determined. We both knew how to handle it. Our parents had taken us hunting since we were old enough to carry a backpack. His hands were shaking badly, but he managed to slide in the rounds one at a time while I stood at the doorway keeping an eye on the hall. I could still hear footsteps downstairs, not rushing now, slower, more careful. He was still in the house, moving through it like he had time. When Tyler stood, he held the rifle tight against his shoulder. I told him to stay behind me. We moved quietly, down the stairs, avoiding the ones we knew would creak. The sound from the living room got louder. Someone knocking things over, glass clinking, fabric rustling. We reached the bottom step and I saw him, standing by the coffee table, digging through Mom's purse. He had his back to us. "Hey!" I shouted. The man jerked around. Tyler lifted the rifle, arms stiff, the barrel pointed square at the man's chest. The guy froze. His hands went up instantly. He didn't say a word. His eyes flicked between us, then back to the rifle. Tyler's jaw clenched. His hands were trembling, but he didn't lower the gun. The man began to step backward, slow, careful. He was heading toward the window he'd come through. Cold wind blew in behind him, snow dusting the edge of the carpet and soaking the curtains. The guy kept his hands in the air, never taking his eyes off Tyler. "Get out of our house," I said. My voice came out louder than I expected. "Go. Now." He didn't argue, didn't beg. He climbed back through the broken window faster than he'd come in. He slipped once, catching himself on the glass. Then he was gone. We heard him run, boots crunching deep in the snow, the sound fading fast into the wind. I shut the living room light off so he wouldn't see us through the glass if he came back. Then Tyler and I shoved the coffee table and the couch in front of the window to block some of the cold. It wasn't much help. The snow kept blowing in through the cracks. The living room dropped in temperature fast. Tyler checked the lock on the back door, then brought the rifle over and leaned it against the wall near the couch. We took turns sitting up with it. One of us would sit holding the rifle across our lap, while the other sat under blankets watching the stairs or the front window. We didn't talk much. Just listened. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. Every creak in the floorboards made my pulse jump. Neither of us slept. Not for a second. At some point the storm eased up. The wind slowed. The snow just fell straight down after that. We kept the lights off and stayed under blankets. I kept checking the clock every 10 minutes. At exactly 7 in the morning, we saw the headlights through the front window. A car pulling up the driveway, wheels crunching through the snow. Tyler stood first. I went to the door and peeked out. It was them. Mom and Dad. When they stepped inside, they stopped short. The cold hit them first. Then they saw the mess. The glass, the couch in front of the window, the rifle in Tyler's hands. Mom dropped her purse. Dad looked around once, then turned to me. What happened? We told them everything, step by step. I expected yelling, maybe even panic. But Dad just nodded, listening without interrupting. Mom sat down on the arm of the chair and didn't speak until we were done. Then she got up and hugged us both. Dad called the police. They came out later that morning and walked around the house. One officer found scratches on the back door, like someone had tried to pry it open first. The snow covered most of the tracks, but they saw enough. The officer told us that whoever it was had probably gotten desperate in the storm. Maybe he saw lights and thought no one would be up. Or maybe he didn't care. He never got caught. They took a report, collected a few glove prints from the window, but nothing ever came from it. That was the last break-in we ever had. After that, Dad installed a full security system, motion sensors, cameras, floodlights outside. Mom bought a second phone just for emergencies and told us to call her, no matter what time it was, if anything felt wrong. We didn't talk about it much after that. Not in front of the girls, at least. But I noticed how Dad started double-checking every window before leaving the house. I saw how Tyler always paused at the stairs now, listening for sounds before going down at night. I never forgot the way that man looked when he realized we were awake. The way his hands shot up when he saw the rifle. I don't think I ever will. People always say you grow up fast after something scary. But that night, I didn't feel older. I just felt cold, alert, and tired. Like I understood something that I hadn't before. That sometimes, it's not about being brave. It's about doing what you have to, because no one else is there to do it. So when I was working as a marketing coordinator, I used social media constantly for both work and personal stuff. I had an Instagram account that was technically professional, but really, I used it like anyone else. Random updates, selfies, pictures of my lunch, vacations, whatever. Nothing crazy, but I didn't keep it private either. In January 2020, I noticed this user called Richard K89, who was liking and commenting on every single post I made. At first I didn't think much of it. The comments were basic, just stuff like nice photo or looks fun under pictures of my dog or me at a coffee shop. It felt harmless, and since my account was public for work reasons, I assumed he was just some guy who found my profile through hashtags or something. But after a few weeks, his comments started getting more personal. He would reference stuff from old posts that were months back, like things I'd completely forgotten I'd even shared. Under one picture of me at a museum, he wrote, "Looks even better than the one you visited in DC last fall," which weirded me out, because that post was way down my timeline. Then he started commenting things like, "Hope to run into you sometime," and "We'd be such good friends." I didn't reply to any of it, and I figured if I ignored him, he'd lose interest and move on. I mean, that's what usually happens. But he didn't. I clicked on his profile. It was private, no profile picture, barely any followers, and only 2 posts, both quotes from movies. Nothing revealing, nothing useful. Just one of those accounts you can't get anything from. Still, I figured it was just some awkward internet dude. I told myself not to overreact. I even muted his comments so I wouldn't see them anymore, thinking that would be enough. It wasn't. The turning point was a selfie I posted in front of my new office building. It was just me holding a coffee, captioned something generic like, "New Year, New View." Richard commented, "I wish I could work next to you every day." That one made my stomach twist. It felt too close, too specific. Like he wasn't just watching my posts, he was picturing himself in my life. That was enough for me. I blocked his account immediately. I didn't respond, just blocked and went back to work, thinking that would be the end of it. The next morning, there was a new follower, different username, something like RKE1989 now, but the same pattern, liked every single post, then started commenting. First it was, "Why did you block me?" Then, "I'm not a threat." Then, "I just want to be friends. Why are you being like this?" I blocked that account too. A few hours later, another one popped up. This time, the comments were more aggressive. "You think you're better than everyone?" And, "Where do you live anyway? I just want to talk." I deleted the comments and blocked him again. Then another account showed up. And another. He was creating them faster than I could block them. I stopped posting entirely, made my account private, even changed my username slightly, hoping that would throw him off. But it didn't help. He started messaging me through my work email. It was easy to find, on my company website, public contact for media inquiries. The first message was short. "Hey, it's Richard. You don't have to be scared. I'm just trying to get to know you." The next one had a screenshot of a photo I'd posted 6 months ago, zoomed in on my necklace, with a comment. "This was a gift, right? Who gave it to you?" I didn't reply. I forwarded it to HR and let them know what was happening, just to be safe. They said I could file a report if I felt threatened, but nothing could really be done unless he made a physical approach. They told me to document everything, which I started doing. Then the emails started coming at night, between 2 and 4 a.m. Always weird, rambling stuff. "I can't sleep knowing you hate me. Why won't you let me explain? You think you're too good for me, but you're not." One night, he sent a photo. It was a blurry shot of my apartment building taken from the street. No message, just the picture. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't recognize the angle, which meant he must have been on foot, maybe across the road, zooming in from behind some parked cars. That's when I knew he wasn't just online anymore. Somehow Richard found my phone number and started calling and texting me directly. The first time it happened, I was in the middle of a meeting when my phone lit up with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but the message he left was just heavy breathing and the words, "I know you're ignoring me." After that, the text started. The tone wasn't begging anymore. It was threatening. "You can't hide from me forever. You think I don't know where you are?" I blocked the number, but it didn't matter. A new one would pop up an hour later. Same kind of message. It became clear he was using some kind of app to cycle through fake numbers. I stopped answering unknown calls altogether. I turned off read receipts, removed my number from every account I could think of, but nothing helped. My hands would shake every time my phone buzzed. I kept it on silent and face down during the day, but that didn't stop me from checking it constantly. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. to see more missed calls and unread messages. Why are you doing this? You belong to me now. This is your fault. The words felt like a weight on my chest. I made all my social media accounts private. I deleted dozens of posts, scrubbed my tagged photos, unfollowed people I didn't know in real life. But even then, fake profiles kept showing up. New accounts with 0 followers, following only me. Sometimes they'd send a message with just a single emoji, like an eye or a house. Other times, they'd reference something I hadn't posted in months. I started to feel like there was nowhere I could go that he wasn't already watching. At work, I couldn't concentrate. I was making stupid mistakes, zoning out during meetings, snapping at coworkers without meaning to. I told my manager I wasn't feeling well and needed a few days off. When I told my friends, they said I should go to the police. But I didn't have much faith anything would come of it. He hadn't threatened violence directly. He hadn't shown up in person. It was just online messages and phone calls. And most of the time, that wasn't enough for anyone to take seriously. The final straw came on a Thursday night. I was home alone, eating dinner, trying not to look at my phone. Then a text came through with a photo attached. It was my apartment building. Not from Google Street View or anything. This was a real photo, taken at night from across the street. My curtains were open. I could see myself in the window. The message under the picture said, "Nice lights." I stood up from the table, heart pounding, turned off all the lights, and pulled the curtains shut. Then I called my dad. I didn't even think, I just said, "Can you come get me?" I packed a bag and was out of there within the hour. I moved back in with my parents and didn't go back to the apartment for days. The next morning, I went to the police and showed them everything. Screenshots, emails, voicemails, that photo. They wrote up a report and said they'd look into it. But they were honest. It would be hard to find him unless he made a mistake. I changed my phone number, deleted most of my apps. I bought blackout curtains for my old apartment. Not that I planned to sleep there again anytime soon. I asked my boss to reassign my accounts to someone else and explained I needed a break from anything public-facing. Thankfully, she was understanding. For 2 months, I barely touched the internet. I didn't post, didn't check messages, didn't open anything unless I was expecting it. And slowly, the messages stopped. No more unknown numbers, no more silent voicemails, no more photos. It was like he vanished. I kept waiting for the next wave to hit, but it never did. The police weren't able to trace anything. They told me whoever was behind it had used VPNs, burner emails, number masking apps. He'd covered his tracks. They asked if I knew anyone named Richard or someone who might have a grudge, but I didn't. Not that I could think of. Eventually they closed the case due to lack of leads. After that, I moved to a different apartment across the city. It took time to feel safe again. I didn't tell anyone the new address except family and 2 close friends. I bought security cameras and a doorbell cam. I only started using social media again under a different handle and with strict privacy settings. No more public posts. No more geotags. No more assumptions that I was invisible online just because I wasn't famous. To this day, I don't know who Richard was. I don't know if it was someone I knew from work, someone I passed on the street, or just a stranger who picked me at random. I don't know why he picked me or what he wanted. All I know is that it started with a like, a comment, and it ended with me afraid to open my own blinds. Now every time I post something online, I ask myself, what could someone do with this? Who could see it? Who might decide it means something it doesn't? Most people scroll and forget, but it only takes one person who doesn't. One person who doesn't stop. One person who sees you as something else. And if that ever happens again, I won't wait. I won't ignore it. I won't assume it'll just go away. Because it doesn't. When I was a sophomore in college, I shared an apartment with this guy Brandon, who was in one of my classes. We weren't really friends, but we both needed someone to split the rent with. The first couple months went fine. We kept to ourselves mostly, and had different schedules, so we didn't see each other that much. Brandon seemed like a pretty normal, quiet guy who spent most of his time studying or playing video games. I thought I had lucked out with a low-maintenance roommate who wouldn't cause any drama. But around October, things started getting weird in our apartment. I would hear doors slamming in the middle of the night when Brandon was supposedly asleep. There were footsteps in the hallway at like 3 a.m. and sometimes knocking on my bedroom door. The knocks were soft the first couple times, like someone checking to see if I was awake. But then there were a few nights where it was loud, 3 clear knocks spaced out like someone doing it on purpose. When I opened the door, no one was there. At first I figured Brandon had some weird late-night habits, or maybe he was messing with me for some reason. But every time I asked, he looked confused. "What do you mean?" he'd say. "I didn't get up at all last night." I didn't want to push it because it seemed like maybe I was just imagining things. I stopped drinking caffeine in the evenings and kept my phone next to the bed in case it happened again. One night, the noise was worse than usual. I heard the front door open and close twice, the sound of keys jingling, then footsteps going back and forth across the kitchen floor. I lay there just staring at the ceiling, listening. It went on for like half an hour. The next morning I asked Brandon if he had been up and he shook his head. "I didn't even leave my room, man. Maybe the neighbors were making noise?" He looked serious. Not annoyed, not sarcastic. Just blank and a little nervous. After that, he started locking his bedroom door at night. I noticed because I got up one time around 2 to use the bathroom, and his door was definitely locked. The knob wouldn't turn. He said it was because he didn't feel safe anymore. He laughed when he said it, but it wasn't a real laugh. He looked tired. Neither of us were sleeping well. At first, I thought maybe Brandon was sleepwalking or had insomnia and was just moving around the apartment at night. But when I asked him about it, he seemed genuinely confused and said he hadn't heard anything. He started acting worried too, and suggested maybe we had mice or something making noise in the walls. The incidents kept happening though, and they were getting more frequent. I would hear what sounded like someone walking back and forth in the living room for hours. Sometimes there would be 3 loud knocks on my door, but when I opened it, nobody was there. Brandon's room was always quiet and dark when these things happened. We started talking about whether we should call the landlord, or maybe even the police. He said he'd started waking up with his door wide open, even though he was sure he locked it. One time he woke up and his backpack had been unzipped and moved to the foot of his bed. "I thought maybe you came in and needed something," he said. But I hadn't. I hadn't gone near his room. We decided we would take turns staying up one night just to see what was happening. Brandon offered to do it first. He said he had a big test coming up anyway, and he'd just pull an all-nighter. I went to bed around midnight. Sometime around 4, I woke up and saw my door was cracked open about an inch. I always closed it fully before sleeping. I got up and checked. Brandon wasn't in the living room. The lights were off. His bedroom door was closed and locked again. In the morning, I asked him what happened. He said he stayed up until around 2 but didn't see or hear anything, so he decided to go to bed after all. He said maybe the noises stopped because we were expecting them. That didn't make much sense to me, but I didn't argue. A few days later, I came home from class, and the chain lock was on the door from the inside. I rang the bell and waited, figuring Brandon must be home. He wasn't. After about 10 minutes of knocking and calling him, I gave up and went to the leasing office. They sent someone to unlock it. When we finally got in, Brandon's room was empty. His bed was made, nothing seemed touched. But his backpack and phone were on the couch, and a full glass of water was sitting on the kitchen counter. I tried calling him, but his phone was right there on the cushion. We waited around for about an hour, assuming he went out for a walk or something and forgot to take his keys. He never came back. By that night, I called the police. They asked all the usual questions. No, he didn't have family nearby. No, he hadn't mentioned any plans to leave. No, nothing was missing. His shoes, coat, even his wallet were still in the apartment. That was the last time I saw Brandon. The truth came out in a completely unexpected way. Brandon had an old friend from high school who found me on social media and sent me a message. I didn't recognize the guy's name at first, but he said he used to know Brandon pretty well, and they'd kept in touch off and on. He told me that Brandon had been bragging about pulling pranks on his roommate and how funny it was to scare me. At first, I didn't know what he meant, but then he explained. Brandon had been using sound recordings and some kind of remote-controlled devices to make the noises at night. Things like timed audio from his phone or a little motorized gadget to knock on my door. According to this guy, Brandon thought it was hilarious to see how paranoid I was getting. He apparently didn't like me from the beginning, but didn't want to confront me directly. So instead, he decided to make the apartment as stressful as possible to see what I would do. The friend said he felt guilty about it, especially after hearing that Brandon had completely ghosted me and let me think something serious had happened. I read the message twice. I felt sick. I'd spent weeks thinking maybe we had an intruder, or even that something was seriously wrong with the building. I felt like an idiot for falling for it, but more than anything, I felt furious. I'd been losing sleep, questioning myself, even thinking about seeing a doctor because of what he was doing. And he thought it was just a joke. I didn't respond to the message right away. I sat with it for a couple hours, rereading everything. Then I started thinking about how to confront Brandon. He came back 2 days later like nothing happened. No explanation, no apology. Just walked in with a grocery bag and went into his room. I waited until the next morning, then knocked on his door. He opened it like he had no idea what was coming. I told him his friend had messaged me and that I knew everything. He tried to act confused at first, asking, "What are you talking about?" and laughing like I was joking. I didn't let up. I told him I knew about the recordings, the remote knocking, everything. That's when he started getting defensive, saying maybe his friend misunderstood or was lying to mess with him. But I kept pushing. I said I would start looking through his room and calling the landlord if I had to. He got quiet then. He didn't look scared, just annoyed. He finally said, "Okay, fine. Yeah, I did it. But it's not like I hurt you. I was just curious how people react to stress. It was an experiment. You were interesting." He actually said that like it was some kind of compliment. I told him it wasn't an experiment, it was psychological torture. He smirked and said I was being dramatic. After that, the weird noises stopped. But Brandon changed too. He started playing loud music every night, blasting it at 2 or 3 in the morning. He stopped cleaning, left trash all over the kitchen, used my dishes and never washed them. He started eating my food, stuff I clearly labeled with my name. I didn't say much after that confrontation. I just started counting the days until the semester ended. The apartment felt like a battlefield. We barely spoke, except for the passive-aggressive slamming of doors or bumping into each other in silence. I moved out at the end of the semester and found a new place with different roommates. Brandon didn't say a word when I left, but a week later, I got an email from the leasing office saying that Brandon was trying to claim the full security deposit, saying I had damaged the walls in my bedroom and left stains on the carpet. Luckily, I had taken photos of everything the day I moved out. I sent them to the office and explained the situation. Eventually, they split the deposit and I got my half. I never spoke to Brandon again. A mutual acquaintance told me he dropped out the following year and moved back in with his parents. I didn't ask for details. That whole experience changed how I look at people. You really don't know someone until you live with them. Some people can be perfectly normal on the surface, polite even, and still be doing something completely twisted behind your back. Brandon wasn't loud or angry or violent. He was calm, quiet, and calculated. He didn't care about me. He just wanted to watch what would happen if he kept pushing. Since then, I've been a lot more careful about who I agree to live with. I ask more questions. I check references. And if something feels off, I trust that feeling. Living with someone manipulative can wreck your mental health. It's not worth trying to tough it out. If you feel unsafe or unsure, leave. No joke, no experiment is worth losing sleep or peace of mind. I learned that the hard way. When I was in my second year at State, I preferred studying in libraries and reading halls instead of my noisy dorm room. I'd hop from building to building depending on what was open late and how crowded it got. I didn't like people looking over my shoulder while I worked. The humanities building had a fifth-floor reading room with tall windows and long wooden tables that usually stayed quiet past dinner hours. That night, I went up there around 6:30 p.m., found a seat near the back, and took out my laptop and a textbook. I had a playlist on low volume through my headphones and was just trying to stay focused on a psych paper that was already overdue. Maybe an hour or so in, I pulled off one of my headphones to stretch and drink some water. That's when I heard it. Slow, even footsteps in the hallway. Not a lot of people went to that floor, especially not during midweek evenings. At first, I figured maybe it was just maintenance or another student, but the sound was strange. The steps didn't echo the way they normally did. They sounded too controlled. I turned to look behind me, expecting to see someone passing through, but the hallway outside was empty. I stared for a second longer. Then, just as I was about to look away, I caught a glimpse of someone disappearing around the far corner. Black pants, gray shoes maybe? Hard to tell. They didn't look back. The steps stopped completely right after that. I waited a second, listening. Nothing. No doors opened or closed. I turned back to my laptop, tried to brush it off. I told myself they probably went into one of the side study rooms or the bathroom. Still, I kept one earbud out after that. I wanted to know if those steps came back. They didn't. But the silence that settled in the hallway felt heavier than usual. Not peaceful, just too still. Like the floor itself was holding its breath. I stayed for maybe another hour but didn't get much done. I packed up around 9 p.m. and went straight back to my dorm without taking the elevator. The next afternoon, I headed to the arts building. They had a smaller, older library tucked behind the sculpture studios. A bit cramped, but quiet enough. I wanted to clear my head and work somewhere different. I found a seat near the windows and started typing notes for my psych paper. The radiator hissed and clicked every so often, but otherwise it was quiet. Then I heard them again, those same footsteps. I paused mid-sentence and just listened. 1, 2, 3. Then stop. like someone was pacing the hallway just beyond the door. I sat still, staring ahead at my screen. The steps started again, slower this time, and then stopped right before reaching the entrance to the reading room. I turned my head slightly, just enough to glance toward the hallway. Nothing. But it felt like someone was there, just standing around the corner. I could see the edge of the hallway from my seat, and I kept expecting a face to appear any second. A student maybe, or a professor. But nobody showed. I stared for a bit longer, then reached down and slowly unplugged my charger. I put my laptop in my backpack without standing up, and tried to keep my movements quiet. As I zipped my bag, the footsteps started again. Soft. Measured. Coming closer. I stood and walked quickly toward the main entrance of the library. The footsteps picked up too, matching my pace. I didn't run, but I moved fast, pushing the door open with one hand while holding my bag strapped tight with the other. I glanced over my shoulder as I reached the lobby. That's when I saw him. Tall, maybe 6'2". Jeans, dark jacket zipped up high, hood halfway over his head. He wasn't rushing, just walking directly toward me with steady steps. He didn't say anything, didn't look away, didn't act surprised when I turned. He didn't even blink. He just kept coming. I ran out of the building through the side exit and didn't stop until I was half a block away. I didn't hear footsteps behind me, didn't see anyone when I looked back, but I kept moving fast. When I got to the dorm, I slammed the door shut and locked it. My hands were shaking as I set my bag down. I checked the hallway from the peephole 3 times before I finally sat down on the edge of my bed. My roommate wasn't back yet, which made the place feel even more quiet than usual. That guy hadn't said a word, hadn't done anything besides walk toward me, but something about him, his face, his stare, stayed with me. It wasn't just the way he looked. It was the way he looked at me. Like he already knew everything about me. My name, where I lived, what I'd do next. I tried to convince myself it was just a creepy guy who'd followed me by chance, but I knew better. The look in his eyes wasn't curious. It was familiar. I stayed in that night and didn't go to class the next day. I didn't even want to be seen walking across campus. 2 nights later, I was brushing my teeth when my roommate stepped into the bathroom doorway. "Hey," he said. "Some guy came by earlier looking for you." I wiped my mouth with a towel. "What guy?" He shrugged. "I don't know. Tall, jeans, black jacket. Asked for you by your full name." He said it so casually, like it was just someone from class. But I knew it wasn't. I asked him what else the guy said. "Not much," he said. "Seemed a little off." I told him you weren't here. He asked when you'd be back. I said I didn't know. Then he just left. No message, no name, just walked off. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about how close he'd gotten to me, to my dorm, to my name. I went to campus security the next morning. The officer at the front desk had me fill out an incident report. I gave him a full description of the man, the exact time I saw him, and what my roommate had told me. He asked if I had any exes or enemies. I told him I didn't. No one had it out for me. At least, no one I knew of. He nodded and said they'd check the building cameras and increase patrols in the area. Then he told me something that stuck with me. Change up your routine. Don't be predictable. People who follow others usually look for patterns. He gave me a card for campus escort services and told me to use it if I ever felt unsafe. I thanked him and left. That day I deleted my public social media. I moved all my study materials to the main library and only went during daylight hours. I stopped wearing headphones in public. I kept my eyes up when I walked. I started noticing how many exit doors each building had, how many people were around me at any given time. The man didn't come back, at least not that I saw. A week passed, then another. I started to wonder if he'd moved on. Then security called. The officer from before told me they had checked the camera footage from the arts and humanities buildings. "We saw someone who matches your description," he said. "But we couldn't get a clear image. Hood up most of the time. No ID swipe either." I asked him if they thought he was a student. He said, "Could be, or someone who knows the campus well enough to get around." That was the last update I ever got. The man just vanished. Finals came and went. I stayed alert, but nothing happened. No more footsteps, no more visitors at my dorm. But the feeling didn't leave. I stopped using the 5th floor of the humanities building completely. I didn't even like walking past it. Every time I turned a corner, I expected him to be there again, just watching. I made it through the semester and passed all my classes, but it didn't feel like a win. I started checking windows without thinking, crossing streets early if someone walked behind me too long. Even now, months later, I still think about it. How he knew my full name. How he looked at me like I was someone he already knew. What did he want? A conversation? Revenge? Something worse? I'll never know. And maybe that's the part that bothers me most. That he could have been there for days. Maybe longer. Watching me while I worked. Waiting for the right moment. The idea that someone like that could get so close without ever being caught. Yeah, I still don't study alone anymore. I rented a small house in a Denver suburb during the summer of 2017. It was a single-story place just off a 2-lane road, tucked between empty lots and overgrown bushes, with the nearest house barely visible through the trees. I found it on Craigslist, cheap, furnished, and available immediately. The listing said it was perfect for someone needing quiet, which was exactly what I was after. I had picked up a major freelance contract that required long hours, and I didn't want the distractions of roommates or traffic. The neighborhood was unusually silent, even during the day, and at night, it felt completely cut off from everything. The first few days went by without anything strange. I unpacked, organized my workspace in the small dining room, and got into a routine of working from the afternoon until late into the night. The place felt a little dusty and old, but solid. There was a fenced-in backyard with a shed, a long gravel driveway, and curtains that didn't quite cover the windows fully. I wasn't worried, though. It was peaceful. I didn't even bother locking the bedroom door at night. But after about 4 or 5 days, I started noticing something. Around 11 or midnight, I'd sometimes hear faint noises outside. Not from the road. These came from behind the house. At first it sounded like someone stepping on dry grass or crunching gravel slowly, cautiously. I paused my music and stood up, listened closely. But every time I moved toward a window, the sound would stop. When I looked outside, the yard was always empty. I figured it could have been raccoons or a stray dog. There were woods stretching out behind the fence, so it wasn't unreasonable. The noises happened again the next night. This time I was brushing my teeth and heard the same crunching sound. Slow steps, like someone was pacing just under the window in the bathroom. I didn't turn off the light or open the curtain. I just stood there with the toothbrush in my mouth, waiting. After maybe 10 seconds, the sound stopped. When I finally peeked out, there was nothing there. Still, it got to me. The next day, I walked the whole perimeter of the property. I looked for footprints, disturbed grass, anything. But I found nothing out of place. I convinced myself it was animals again. Or maybe I was hearing the wind moving the fence. The nights were silent otherwise. No cars, no people walking dogs, just dead quiet. My mind could have been playing tricks. I hadn't slept properly in days, working late and crashing around 3 every morning. But even so, I started locking the bedroom door. It made me feel slightly more in control, even if I didn't know what I was protecting myself from. That weekend, I tried sleeping earlier. Around 10 p.m., I shut the laptop and got ready for bed. I left a lamp on in the hallway and climbed into bed with my phone. I lay there scrolling, waiting to fall asleep. Then, around 11:30, I heard it again. This time it was different. It didn't sound like pacing. It was more deliberate. 3 or 4 steps, then nothing. Then the faintest noise, like someone dragging something lightly across wood. My heart rate jumped, and I sat up. I didn't get out of bed. I didn't move at all for at least a minute. Eventually, I picked up my phone and opened the camera, turned on the flash, and took a picture out the window. I checked the photo. It showed nothing but fence, dark trees, and grass. But that night, I didn't sleep. On Sunday, I went to the hardware store and bought a motion light for the backyard. It was one of those cheap, battery-powered models that stick above the door. I set it up facing the fence line. That night, I left all the lights off in the back of the house to see if it would catch anything. I waited. I worked until 1 a.m. with the back windows slightly cracked open. I didn't hear anything. I didn't see the light trigger. Around 2:30, I called it a night. But when I stepped into the kitchen, I noticed the back door's curtain had shifted slightly, like someone had moved it. I told myself I probably left it like that earlier. The next evening, I was at my laptop again. I had my headphones on and was editing audio files when I felt something more than heard it, a vibration or a thud. I paused the track and listened. A second later, I heard it again. A sharp crack, like something had struck glass. It was the unmistakable sound of a window pane flexing under pressure. I stood up fast and ripped the headphones off. Then it came again. A louder crack, glass breaking. It was coming from the kitchen. I didn't hesitate. I ran straight into the bedroom, slammed the door, and locked it. My phone was in my hand before I even realized I had grabbed it. I dialed 911, kept my voice low but urgent. "Someone's trying to break into my house," I said. "I'm alone. The address is..." I rattled it off. The dispatcher asked if I could hear them now and told me to stay on the line. Then I heard movement. Not footsteps exactly, but weight shifting, like someone pushing against something. The back door. I could hear it straining. Then the knob turned once. Slowly. I yelled as loud as I could. "I called the cops! I'm not alone!" I repeated it. Then again. I kept shouting, trying to sound angry instead of terrified. It didn't matter. The sound continued. A sharp, metallic thud, like someone slamming a tool or their foot against the door's lower panel. I backed further into the room and shoved a chair under the doorknob. I still had the dispatcher on the line. She was telling me officers were en route, asking if I could describe the person. I couldn't. I hadn't seen anything. The pounding on the door kept going, maybe 5 or 6 more hits. Then silence. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I stood there gripping the phone until the dispatcher said, "The officers are pulling into your driveway now. Stay where you are." The police arrived about 8 minutes after I made the call, but by then, whoever had been trying to get in was already gone. 2 officers came through the front, guns drawn but calm, asking me to stay inside the bedroom while they cleared the house. I listened from behind the door, heart still racing. They gave the all clear a few minutes later and walked me through the damage. The back door had been hit hard with something heavy, probably a crowbar or the heel of a boot. One of the small kitchen windows was shattered, with broken glass all over the floor and countertop. There were boot prints on the back porch, muddy, spaced far apart like someone had been running. And one of the officers pointed out that the same prints led away from the house toward the fence. They asked if anything had been stolen, but I told them I didn't think the intruder had gotten inside. The front door and windows were all intact. Nothing in the house looked disturbed beyond what I'd already seen in the kitchen. The officers took photos and made notes. One of them said it looked like an attempted burglary gone wrong. Probably someone who thought the place was empty and bailed when they heard shouting and saw lights. Another officer mentioned there had been a few similar break-ins recently. A quiet area, isolated properties, same kind of forced entry. He handed me a card and suggested I install motion lights, security cameras, and an alarm system as soon as possible. They don't usually come back once they know someone's watching, he said. I had a security company come out the next morning. The technician installed door sensors, window alarms, and 4 cameras, 2 outside, 2 inside. He showed me how to use the app to view live feeds, arm the system remotely, and get alerts when something triggered the motion detection. I bought blackout curtains for every room, thick enough that nobody could see in even if the lights were on. I also moved my workspace to a spot where the windows were higher up and harder to reach. That first night with the new system, I barely slept. Every creak of the house set me on edge. I kept checking the camera feeds on my phone. Once I got an alert at 2:14 a.m. and jumped out of bed. Turned out to be a raccoon digging through the trash bin at the side of the house. For the rest of the week, I lived like that. Sleep came in short bursts. I kept the bedroom door locked, even when I was awake. I called the police 2 more times, once when I thought I saw someone standing near the fence line, and again when the front camera picked up a shadow moving past the driveway. Both turned out to be nothing. The officers were patient, though. They said it was good to be cautious. I called the insurance company about the window and back door, and they covered the repairs after I sent them the police report. But the security upgrades came out of pocket. I didn't mind. It felt worth it just to have something that made me feel a little more in control. Even with all that, I never felt fully safe again in that house. I kept to the same routine every night. Double-check all the locks, set the alarm, review the camera feeds, pull the curtains tight, keep my phone and a flashlight by the bed. I never opened the back door after dark, even just to take out trash. The boot prints had haunted me, how they led away, calmly, like whoever it was hadn't been scared, like they might come back if they thought I was gone. The police said they had some prints from the porch and were comparing them to other open cases, but I never heard back about it. No arrests, no follow-up. They probably never found out who did it. I managed to finish my freelance project 2 weeks ahead of schedule. I didn't bother staying to the end of the rental term. I packed everything up on a Friday morning, locked the door behind me one last time, and drove straight back to the city. The rental company sent someone to do the final walkthrough. I told them about the break-in and everything I'd added. The cameras, the alarm system, the extra locks. They thanked me and said they'd look into adding more permanent security. I didn't believe them. That house would probably be listed again in a month with the same ad. Quiet, private, perfect for work. I still think about it sometimes. How different it could have gone if I hadn't been awake when the glass broke. If I'd been asleep, or if I hadn't yelled, or if they'd come in a few minutes later. The sound of that shattering window still plays in my head sometimes when I hear loud noises at night. I don't live in isolated places anymore. No more rural properties, no long driveways, no quiet streets with no neighbors in sight. I still like working alone, but now I stay in buildings with other people, with shared walls and visible streetlights and apartment numbers. I learned that night how quickly things can go wrong when you think you're completely alone. My buddy Ryan and I went on a 3-day camping trip in the dense forests of Oregon last fall. It wasn't our first time, but we hadn't been out together since college, so we were both looking forward to just disconnecting and sitting around a fire for a couple nights. The drive-in was quiet. I remember the sky being overcast but dry, the road narrowing the deeper we got into the woods. We parked off a gravel pullout near a worn trailhead with no sign, just a painted orange ribbon tied to a tree. It didn't look like a lot of people came out here. That was the whole point. We hiked in for about an hour and picked a spot that was mostly flat and had a little clearing with a fire ring made of blackened stones. Trees surrounded us on all sides. We set up the tent, gathered a bit of wood, and cooked something simple. As the sun dropped, the temperature came down fast. I remember us sitting by the fire, passing a flask back and forth, talking about old jobs and exes. Around 10 or 11, we started hearing rustling in the trees behind us. Not loud, just the kind of dry leaves shuffling sound you'd expect from an animal. Ryan glanced toward the noise and said, "Probably a raccoon." I nodded. We'd sealed our food in the bear bag and hung it like always. The noise stopped for a while, but I still caught myself glancing that direction now and then. Right before we turned in for the night, the rustling came again, closer this time, and from a different angle. Still just one direction though. Ryan shined his headlamp toward it but didn't see anything. "Might be a deer," he mumbled. We zipped the tent shut and called it a night. Next morning was cold and quiet. No tracks, no signs of anything unusual. Ryan said he was going to look for firewood and explore the ridge we'd seen on our way in. I stayed back to get our stuff a bit more organized. We had 2 radios with decent range, something we'd used on other trips before. Around noon, he radioed to say he was heading a bit farther down the trail and would be back by 4 or 5. I told him I'd keep the fire going. By 6, he still wasn't back. I radioed him. No reply. Tried again a few minutes later. Nothing. I wasn't panicked yet, but I started pacing. I got the fire going strong, thinking maybe he'd see the smoke. The light was fading fast, and it got real cold once the sun dipped below the tree line. I was checking my watch every few minutes. At around 8, finally, the radio crackled. "Hey, I'm here," his voice came through. I got turned around. I found a small lake about half a mile from camp. Gonna use it as a landmark and head back. He sounded calm. Maybe tired, but not scared. He said the lake was west of camp, and he could probably get back on his own. I told him I'd meet him halfway with the flashlight to make it easier. I grabbed the radio, flashlight, a thermal blanket just in case, and headed out. The forest at night is a different world. Sounds carry weird, and the light from the flashlight barely reached past the trees. I kept trying to stay oriented by memory and by looking for our trail markers, but it wasn't as clear in the dark. 10 minutes into the walk, the radio buzzed again. "I can see you nearby," Ryan said. I stopped walking and turned in a slow circle. "Where?" No answer. I waited, clicked the radio again. "Ryan, you said you can see me?" Nothing. The woods were silent. No wind, no bugs, no leaves moving. Just the thin sound of my own breathing. I flashed the light around in a circle. Nothing. Not even a bird or squirrel darting off. I called out his name. "Ryan?" Silence. I waited, radio in hand, staring at the trees. The beam of the flashlight flicked across branches, trunks, ground. No movement. My boot scraped against a rock, but nothing else stirred. I clicked the radio again, voice lower this time. "Ryan?" No static, no reply. I stood there for a long moment, just listening. The trees felt like they were pressing in. The lake, wherever it was, wasn't in sight. I wasn't sure if I should keep walking or turn back. I took one step forward, then another, still sweeping the light. I moved slower now, watching the edge of every tree. The flashlight flickered for a second, just a quick dimming. I tapped it against my hand, and the light steadied. I tried the radio again. "Where are you? You said you saw me." Still no answer. I stayed still. No footsteps. No voice. Just the dead quiet of thick woods in the dark. I made it to the lake but found no trace of Ryan anywhere. The water was calm, smooth like glass, reflecting the sliver of moonlight above. I walked the shoreline in both directions, scanning the ground for footprints or broken branches. Nothing. I called his name again and again, circling around trees, brushing aside bushes, stepping over fallen logs. My voice bounced off the water but never got a reply. The radio was dead silent no matter how many times I tried it. Not even static, just dead air. After about 20 minutes, I started getting nervous. I didn't want to get turned around out here. I marked the trail back to camp with a small pile of rocks and started heading in the direction I'd come from, flashlight pointed down to avoid tripping. I moved slower this time, stopping now and then to listen for anything. The silence still felt off, like the forest was holding its breath. About halfway back, I saw the glow between the trees. The fire at camp was still burning, but I hadn't left it that strong. As I stepped into the clearing, I froze. A man was sitting by the fire. He was tall, thin, and hunched forward slightly, like he'd been waiting. His face was pale and his dark hair looked greasy under the light. He was wearing jeans and a gray hoodie that looked almost exactly like the one Ryan had been wearing earlier. For a second, I thought maybe it was Ryan, but something was off. The man looked up and locked eyes with me. No smile, no words. Just stared. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. Then, as quickly as he noticed me, he stood and slipped into the woods on the opposite side of the fire. Not running, just walking fast and quiet. Gone within seconds. I wanted to chase after him, or at least yell, but I couldn't move. My legs felt frozen. When I finally stepped forward and looked around, the woods were quiet again. Nothing but the crackling fire left behind. A few minutes passed before Ryan came stumbling out from the other side of the clearing. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking. He looked like he'd been running. When he saw me, he stopped and just stared for a second, catching his breath. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded slowly, then shook his head. "There was a guy near the lake." I didn't say anything, just waited. "He just stood there," Ryan said. He had this weird grin on his face like he was waiting for something. I said something, I don't even remember what. He didn't respond. He just kept looking at me. Then he started walking toward me, slow. I don't know why. I ran. "You called me on the radio after that?" He looked confused. "No. I didn't use the radio again after I told you about the lake. That was the last time." I held up my radio and showed him the screen. "You said, 'I can see you nearby.'" He took a step back. "I never said that." We both went quiet. The pieces started connecting. Someone had been watching us. Someone who had access to our frequency, or maybe a scanner. Someone who waited for us to split up. Someone who knew how to get close without being heard. Ryan looked over at the fire. "Was it him?" I nodded. He was sitting right there. We didn't speak after that. We grabbed our packs, shoved everything in without folding or checking, stomped out the fire with dirt and water, and got moving. The trail back was hard to follow in the dark, but we knew the general direction. We kept our flashlights on low to preserve the batteries and moved fast. Every sound in the forest made us stop and turn. We didn't talk, just walked. Occasionally I'd check behind us with the light, but I never saw anything. We didn't stop to rest. Not once. By the time we reached the trailhead and saw the shape of the car through the trees, the sun was just starting to rise. Ryan unlocked the doors, and we both got in without saying anything. The second the engine started, I felt my first real breath of relief. We drove until we found a gas station with lights on and parked outside until it opened. Neither of us slept. We sat there with the doors locked, staring through the windshield at nothing. Later that morning, we found the nearest ranger station. We told them what happened. Everything. The radio. The man. The lake. The ranger didn't look surprised. He just listened, took down our names, and nodded a lot. When we finished, he leaned back and said, "We've had a few similar reports in that area the past year. People hearing voices that aren't their friends, seeing someone watching their camp. No one's ever caught him, but we're keeping an eye on it." We asked if there was anything they could do. He just said, "There's a lot of land out there, a lot of places to hide." That was the last conversation we had about it. Ryan and I didn't go camping again. We don't talk much anymore either. Not on purpose. It's just something that happens after something like that. You move on. You try anyway. I think about that man sometimes. Sitting by our fire like he belonged there. Disappearing into the woods like he'd done it before. I don't know what he wanted. I don't think it was anything good. And I learned something out there that night. When you're out in the middle of nowhere, you might feel alone. But you're not. Some people go out into the wild to disappear. And some go out there because they know no one's coming to help.